Okay, if we can please start the meeting back again. The next item we have is a public hearing. Excuse me. Calling the meeting to order again. The next item is number 5, a public hearing regarding action on a 4-unit development project located at 1075 Pomeroy Avenue. Community Development Director.
Thank you. Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development. And the project in front of you is a request for a planned development zoning and a tentative parcel map that collectively would allow the development of 4 detached 2-story single-family residences at 1075 Pomeroy Avenue. The project site is adjacent to the Pomeroy Green and across the street from the Pomeroy West townhouse developments. There's been considerable discussion about this project and its relationship to those 2 developments. I would also note that the City Council did on March 6th of this year approve a mitigated negative declaration for the project. So the city's environmental action has already been taken on this project. The remaining actions are the zoning, requested zoning, and tentative parcel map. Just briefly, a description of the project, which may be looking familiar at this point. Consists of 4 residences, 2 different project types. Unit A is 1,670 square foot residence. Those are the 2 that are on the front of the proposed to go on the front of the site, closest to Pomeroy. Unit type B is a little bit larger, at 1,783 square foot residence. These are arranged around a single court. There are 2 guest parking spaces. And then the setbacks are range from 15 foot to 18 foot, 8 inches across both the rear and the front of the site, which is sort of a parallelogram shape. The project would be designed in a modern architectural style. The units have front doors that are oriented toward the street to give that sort of visible front entry that's often considered desirable. The project does have enclosed garages, 2 spaces per unit, and those would be pre-wired for electrical vehicle charging. So a bit of background on the project. This application was filed in 2017. I believe prior to that, the applicant had come in with a 5-unit proposal, but was discouraged from proceeding with that and came in with the Concurrent, which is 4 units. That went to the Planning Commission in September of last year. The Planning Commission recommended approval with some conditions which have been incorporated into the project. And then it proceeded to the City Council in November of last year. After taking testimony, the council referred it to the Historical Landmarks Commission. They held a hearing on January 4th, made some recommendations, and it was returned to the City Council on March 6th. At that hearing, the City Council referred this to the Architectural Review Committee. The Architectural Review Committee conducted 2 hearings, one on March 21st and one on April 4th for the project. The project has appeared on the council agenda a couple times since April 4th, but due to the length of those hearings, agendas, there was not able to have a discussion, and it was continued to tonight's hearing. The 2 architectural review committees, those were referral, since we were last in front of the council, we were referred to those 2 committees and asked to get their input. So we've done that, and that's why we're back tonight. At the first committee, there were 7 residents and from the adjacent properties, and then 1 from represented the Historical Landmarks Commission in attendance. And the committee referred the project to the neighbors and asked them to provide specific design requests that could be made, alterations to the project that could be made to meet their concerns. On March 21st, they did give a list of 13 requested changes to the project. The applicant prepared a response to those, which went to the Architectural Review Committee on April 4th. That was attended by, again, by 7 residents and then 2 representatives of the Historical Landmarks Commission. And the Architectural Review Committee, after reviewing the revised plans, did make a recommendation that the project be approved in its current form at that point. This is a list of the 13 design issues. The first 3, the applicant did incorporate into the revised design. They eliminated the sliding door between the garage and the house. They redesigned the second floor plan to avoid egress windows facing the south side neighbors. They now have clear story windows, which are higher and allowing light but preserve privacy. And they did agree to a condition of approval to restrict the use of the garage for parking only, not for storage use. The next 4 of the 13 conditions, they agreed to 1. They did not agree to increase the setbacks on the side to 20 feet. They remain at 10. They did not redesign it to be an attached multifamily development. They kept it as 4 detached townhouses. They did agree to use only vertical siding, and they eliminated parts of the facade that had a horizontal siding feature. And then there was a request to lower the height to 19 feet. As proposed, it would vary between 20 and 24 feet, and the applicant did not change that height, although they had in previous design changes made some reduction to the height of the project. And then the remaining of the 6, eliminate divided light windows. They did do that. There was a request that they use carports instead of garages. The applicant did not make that change. It continues to have enclosed garages. There is a request to reduce the number of window types, more uniform. They went from 6 to 4. There was a request to use flat roofs for the front porches. The applicant did make that change. There was a request to not use stone veneer on either chimney or wainscoting, and the applicant agreed to both of those. So out of the 13 total number of requested changes, the applicant agreed substantially to 9 of the 13. And it was on that basis that the Architectural Review Committee recommended approval to the City Council the project. Just to summarize how our staff review is done, we do look at general plan consistency is really where we start for proposed plan development zonings. The density of this project is consistent with the general plan and also with the adjacent developments in terms of the number of units per acre, and just all the goals and policies that speak to providing housing of different types and so forth, and also to having a process where the community can be engaged. There has been a significant amount of community input. We just sort of summarized the public hearing process. Prior to that, there were community meetings as well. We looked at environmental impacts. The project would not have environmental impacts significance. And then the input of the Historical Landmarks Commission and Architectural Review Committees as well. And we speak a little bit to the issue that you will likely hear more about tonight. There's been a lot of discussion about the historical value of the Pomeroy Green and Pomeroy West developments, the fact that they were designed by Mr. Eichler and have sort of a unique architectural style associated with that, and that there is a potential process in place for those to be designated. Just in terms of how historical review works, if it's not a district that's being created, but just a property that's being designated, as would be in this case, the standards that we apply, the Secretary of Interior standards, don't transfer to adjacent parcels. So we don't, following the Secretary of Interior standards, review adjacent properties for consistency or try to have them mimic the historical properties that may be nearby. So that doesn't really, in the way we conduct our review, have a bearing on the suitability of the architecture of the project. We really focus on where the city has adopted policies that apply to this type of development. And so it's based on that analysis that staff is recommending to the council that the council approve the requested rezoning from low-density multiple dwelling to planned development, and approve the requested tentative parcel map that would allow the subdivision of 1 lot to 4 lots. And so with that, we're available to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember O'Neill?
Thank you, Director Crabtree. And as a matter of disclosure, I did go out and visit some of the residents at Pomeroy Green and Pomeroy West and walked around the property to look at it. And I was part of the process at the Architecture Review Committee where we listed all of the items where there were disagreement and went through them one by one. So, you know, I guess my only remaining concerns, I mean, I appreciate all the work that Mr. Kratz has put into. You know, I know he has training as an architect, and he did a lot of work. And of course, it comes down to what does the owner of the property want to do, and he did make some changes. But having been out there, so are we, by going to a planned development, are we compromising on some of the setbacks? Because I mean, I could see where some of it looks like it's going to be pretty close.
Right. So the planned development zoning process allows for the city to establish setbacks unique to a property site based on what you think ultimately is appropriate for the site. So, you know, as you see here, the rear yard is 15, the side is 10. 10 foot for a side yard condition between a single family or even this density multifamily is not an unusual distance. You know, single family homes in a single family neighborhood would typically have like as little as 5 foot, and in some cases 3 foot side yard setbacks. You know, it's not out of keeping with what is common. The 15 foot to 18 foot rear yard is a little bit less than what you would see in your traditional single family neighborhood, but it's a court home project. And in the way our general plan is set up, and we look at the density, and the density sort of matches what's around it. We don't specify that something needs to be single family or multifamily. So, you know, it fits in that density. You know, visually, these buildings are of similar height and not overly massive, as you can see, although they are clustered around a court. So, in that we allow this type of development in our general plan. You know, this is in staff's evaluation, these are adequate setbacks to meet that. I know that the adjacent, the neighbors have identified that there is some open space and that they have larger setbacks on their side of the property in their development. But this is a newer development, and these setbacks are in keeping with what is common for this type of project.
Okay. So I'm sure we'll hear from the public. Will probably have some comments on that. So the other item about some of the residents are preparing. I think they maybe have already submitted an application for the entire development to be considered up for the historic register, I believe. And you mentioned the significance of the Eichler developments. So we're confident that from the past experience of staff that even though I do think that this is rather in keeping, you know, it's you know, almost, because you can almost say, well, the Eichler mid-century moderns next to kind of there's a ranch style, kind of typical ranch style home that's there now, that this perhaps is not any more dissimilar than that ranch style home is to the townhomes. But so the experience has been that this would not have any impact on the ability for them to get the historical designation for the complex.
No, you know, this project being approved would not impact the historical merit of the adjacent and their ability to do that. And just to clarify, they're not going through a city process. I believe they've said they were going to submit through a national
I think so. I think it's
process
a
for
registry.
that. So we're not reviewing their request, but really that would just be evaluated. You know, if there's, you know, there is such a thing as a historical district that one could try to establish where then, you know, all the properties in the district can have an impact on it. But if you're really just talking about a property, which is the case here, they would be submitting from what I've understanding of that, the Pomeroy West and Pomeroy Green, or one or both, I'm not sure, as properties to be designated. And if they were designated, it wouldn't affect the way we evaluate this parcel project either, because the guidelines that come into play really speak to alterations to a designated parcel. So were they a designated historic landmark and someone were trying to modify one of the townhouses on that project, that's where those sort of historical guidelines would come into play, rather than looking at an adjacent project that's not part of the historical property.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for the time being.
Thank you. Any other questions for our Development Director from the council? All right, thank you, Mr. Crabtree. If we have the applicant would like to come forward, please. Good evening.
Late evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm Bonnie Bamberg. I'm president of Urban Programmers. We're consultants in historic preservation and urban revitalization. And I've been here before you with this project, so I'm not going to go through all of the things that Director Crabtree enumerated that's been the history of this project. But just to let you know that the developer, Dory Mashka, is here. The architect is here. We're perfectly happy to answer any questions that you might have, whether it's about the development itself or relationship to a proposed historic district. I've nominated several historic districts, and I'm quite familiar with that process. Tonight, we respectfully request that the council agree with the staff report and approve the rezoning from low density R3 118D to planned development PD, and approve the tentative map to subdivide the property into 4 parcels. We also request the council waive the boulevard standard sidewalk for this small section of sidewalk and allow the project to maintain the existing configuration of the sidewalk on that block. And with that, I will conclude and answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no other questions, I guess we'll go to the public now. And I have a list of speakers here. The first is Shalini Venkatesh. Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm a resident owner at Pomeroy West, and I'd like to thank the city commissioners and councillors who have worked with our neighbourhood group and the applicant to reach agreement over the last couple of months on some significant design changes that you've already heard about. I'm very glad that if this project were to go ahead, it would no longer present such a jarring appearance to the slightly more distant neighbours like me. I live across the street and a few doors down, so I personally do appreciate the applicant's willingness to make these various aesthetic design changes. Even so, the really big bones of contention remain. We have consistently argued for months now against the proposed building height and the very small setbacks, as they are the items that would directly and badly affect all the immediately adjacent Pomeroy Green neighbours on 3 sides of the proposed development. The applicant has made a very small change over the past year, less than 1 foot to the height, and has refused to budge at all on the setbacks. I understand why changes here would be unwelcome to the applicant, but I don't see how the city approved rezoning to accommodate one applicant without any benefit to the public and with detriment to many, many neighbours makes sense. As you just heard, an application for historical designation for the Pomeroy Green complex has recently been made and is well underway now, with the first feedback having been provided that Ken will speak more about. Now, apparently different experts in this historical architectural field honestly disagree as to whether such designation would affect restrictions on the allowable setbacks in closely neighbouring housing. I believe at least one such expert who has consulted with the city for many years and has also successfully applied for historical designation on many properties, just as Ms. Bamberg, has written to the council urging that you hold off on deciding approval or denial until after a formal decision on historical significance has been made. I believe the Historical Landmarks Commission has also made a similar request. I add my voice to their request.
Thank you very much. Ken Kratz and then Peggy Parkin after that.
If you have the right one.
Let's not start until we have that first slide up, okay?
That is the correct slide.
Okay.
With the chair's permission, if I could run over a little bit, because I'm going to explain a little bit more about the status of the application.
Just a slight bit. We have a really long meeting
and I
tonight, and
appreciate
it's
it.
already 10:15, but we want to hear you,
Right.
but I'll give you just a few seconds,
Yeah,
okay?
and
Thank
just
you.
for the public's benefit, this has nothing to do with the election districts that we've been that is quite contestable. This is about historic designation and the generation of a historic district, the first one in the city of Santa Clara. So let me get ready to start here. My name is Ken Kratz, and I live in a Eichler townhouse that is located just south of the 1075 Pomeroy Avenue property. This is what's on the slide. Please deny, slide number 2. Please deny the developer's request to rezone and develop the 1075 property until the status of my application to have Pomeroy Green listed on the National Register of Historic Places has been determined, and the ramifications to the 1075 property can be discovered and evaluated. The 1075 project is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, in my opinion, and does not meet the city's zoning and design guidelines, especially the side setbacks that should be 20 feet. That's the backyard of those proposed homes. Additionally, 2 journalists, Mr. Weinstein of the California Modern Magazine and Ms. Shuck of the Santa Clara Weekly newspaper, have both described in letters and articles the historic aspects of our complexes and voiced concerns about the 1075 project. The city is a participant in the state's certified local government program and is required to survey buildings for inclusion in the city's historic resource inventory. Post those survey results and incorporate those results in the planning process. This was not done. I have recently received the first review of my historic application by the state. Corrections are needed to the 56-page application. This is typical. Because Pomeroy Green is eligible under a historic district category, the application is much more difficult and time-consuming to complete. I think I will need at least a year to adequately document the historic significance of Pomeroy Green and meet all the requirements of the state. If you'd like to have the historic determination sooner, perhaps the city or the developer would be willing to hire a licensed architect who specializes in preservation architecture to help complete the application. Last paragraph. Last slide, please. If Pomeroy Green is designated historic by the federal program, the Secretary of the Interior standards will be applicable to 1075. Those standards include a study of building separations. I believe greater separation between our patio homes and the 1075 project will be necessary in order to preserve the historic integrity of our patio homes.
Thank you, Mr. Kratz.
I'd like to have that application back when you're done looking at it.
Okay, thank you. We'll make sure you get it back. It's making its way across the dais here. Ms. Parkin? And then Prasad Kamoju after that. Well, you take your time. You take your time. Welcome. Can we get that from her so she doesn't have to walk all the way over? Thank you. Know the feeling. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Gilmore, City Council, and City staff. My name is Peggy Parkin, a townhome resident owner in the Pomeroy Green Cooperative Townhouse community for 44 years. I am against the rezone of 1075 Pomeroy, a residential single home adjacent to Pomeroy Green's property, whose original owner once owned Pomeroy Green's property. To begin, Pomeroy Green is a 78-unit townhome complex built by the respected Eichler Homes in the 1963 timeframe. My concern is the impact the 1075 proposed development will have on our private park area, and in particular to the 11 Pomeroy Green townhouses surrounding the park property. The current zoning for 1075 needs to be preserved as R3 18D, and the city's design guidelines need to be observed. The zoning and the design guidelines were put in place following a rigorous public process and has been supported by past councils. The proposed project is too large in height, width, number of buildings for the site. It is out of scale with 17 Eichling townhomes that surround the 1075 property, left, right, rear, sides, as well as Pomeroy West across the street. The daylight reaching many of the Pomeroy Green units will be reduced due to the height of the proposed homes. Natural illumination is an important feature of Eichler's respected architecture. The outdoor lighting quality will be compromised also, especially in the reference park area. Pomeroy Green meets open landscape area regulations, especially recreational areas for our youth, that the proposed development does not meet. The character and features of Pomeroy Green and Pomeroy West make Eichler complexes special, and these qualities are worth preserving in one's neighborhood, one's home, its setting in a community with appropriate features to promote social interaction. The 1075 property currently retains from the original owner its lovely late 1950s spacious ranch style with beautiful mature trees. The proposed project will be closer to the street and will not be in conformance with the zoning requirements nor design guidelines. The proposed project exceeds the height of our Eichler townhouses by approximately 1 to 6 inches. The higher roof line is not aesthetic because it will be an imposing element in our Eichler residential neighborhood.
Ms. Parkin, if you could just finish up, and we do have a copy of your letter.
Okay, yes, there's 2 more paragraphs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it, and we'll make sure we read those last 2 paragraphs. Thank you. Prasad, please come forward, and then Nicholas Rossi after that. Welcome.
Mayor, Council, and co-residents of Santa Clara. There was in the presentation, there was something about this CNC, about parking inside the garage and other stuff. The current tenants called...
Can you speak in the microphone, please, so we
Sorry.
can all hear you? Thank you.
The current tenants called police to report that my vehicle was parked there for a while. I promptly took it out. And that evening, when I was taking out, the current tenant comes out and yells at me, "Don't ever park here." That's because they park all their cars outside. They have 2-car garage, never parks inside. That's one point. The next thing is we keep coming back to this setbacks and other things. Are they waivable? The developer refuses to conform or stated to not conform to the setback requirements. Are these requirements simply guidelines or something that must be adhered to? That's a question I've been asking, but I didn't get any answer. And I hope you will answer those questions. So if they were to be, the requirements were to be conformed, you cannot approve it. But that's my understanding. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Nicholas, and then Diane Harrison after that. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Nicholas Rossi. I lived in Pomeroy Green more than 35 years, and I appreciate some changes that the owner has made, but I agree with my neighbors that there's still more needs to be done, and namely the setbacks. I see no reason to change that. I haven't heard any. It's 20 feet. In fact, I walked up Benton and I walked up Pomeroy, not only the Eichler homes which surround him, but other homes on Benton Street and Pomeroy. Virtually all of them have a 20-foot setback. I think this makes the neighborhood prettier. And also, the height limit should be consistent with the Eichler homes which surround them on the north, on the south, and the east, and across the street on the west, Pomeroy West. So for this reason, I agree with my neighbors that they need to make a little more changes, and perhaps we should wait to see what the Historical Commission does. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Harrison?
Got some slides that you, okay, so let's start with one.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, don't start till you see
Yeah,
them
right,
up
I
there.
won't.
We're going to make a joint presentation, and I forgot to mention that again, Shalini mentioned the Historic and Landmarks Commission is asking you to wait on this development. My neighbor signed a letter asking you to wait, and the preservation architect for Pomeroy Green that we hired, Meinweiser and Associates, also asked you to wait. So we're ready to get this slide presentation.
Anyway, my husband Ken has prepared a new alternative design for the 1075 Pomeroy Avenue property that you may prefer. And there are 11 other designs that he has also done. If you'd like to look at those with the preservation architect, if you find this one attractive, I think it's probably the best. And it is fairly compatible with the surrounding Eichlers. This is a perspective of the new complex as seen from Pomeroy Avenue. The design features 4 units of a 2-story design with a secured parking garage. We're no longer asking for carports on the first floor. The entrance to the garage includes a roll-up door. There is a continuous trellis across the facade that will support colorful climbing plants. The architectural style is a modern mission-style architecture reminiscent of the architecture of Irving Gill, the famous California architect. Can you move to the second slide, please? Thank you. This drawing shows the ground floor layout of the building on the 1075 site. 15-foot setbacks are provided that allow for larger backyards, and the site incorporates a tot lot in the back for the residents' children or possibly a daycare. Each unit will have 2 entrances, one from the parking garage and another more formal entrance from the street. What may not be clear is that the second story of the 4 units covers the parking stalls and the entryway. And moving on to the third slide. Flip, please. Yeah, that's okay. Oh. Okay. The floor plans are illustrated here. The ground floor on the left and the second floor on the right. The first floor features a living room, kitchen, and half bath. 4 bedrooms and 2 baths are located on the second floor with laundry facilities. The second floor features an atrium that provides increased light and cross ventilation. It also provides a private outdoor room for family activities. This is a feature found in Pomeroy West that is very popular. And if you have time, the 4th slide. And this is shows the new building on the left and the Pomeroy Green on the right. The separation between the new building and the existing Pomeroy Green building is better. And the longer facade of this alternative is similar to the facade found facing Pomeroy and Pomeroy West across the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I don't have any other cards, so if anyone would like to speak, please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Peter Roberts. I'm a resident at Pomeroy Green. I've been there not quite as long as my other colleagues. I think the new 4 townhome looks way better than what's there already. If we wanted to go for heritage application, I think we'd do really well if we got rid of the building that's there now and had something in its place. And those 4 townhomes looks really spectacular from the outside. I appreciate that the developer has changed their plan to accommodate Pomeroy Green requests. And I don't see that the roofline is much of an issue. It's 1 to 2 feet taller than ours. And in all honesty, the trees in Pomeroy Green are so big and so huge that they block light from the patio homes that are supposed to have so much light. And there's so many trees around that particular applicant's property that I don't see that would even see their roof line. I think the other thing is there's no guarantee that a heritage application would actually succeed. I'm not sure that all the residents of Pomeroy Green are on side with having a heritage application. And I think we need to respect our boundaries. I don't see myself going ahead and redesigning my developers' townhomes for them. I think we need to just respect our neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Anyone else? Okay, next I think we go back to the applicant. Or do we go back to the planning director, community development director? I think it's back to the applicant. Please come forward for a response to the public comments.
Thank you. Again, Bonnie Bamberg. We heard a lot of a really interesting conversation about a historic district or historic site for Pomeroy Green or Pomeroy West. And I would tell you, I would completely support that. I think those are really interesting developments and an application that is prepared correctly and does have a majority of the owners in agreement would probably be successful through the state. It will take a while. They do. We cannot change the setbacks on this development, nor do we feel that they are not appropriate. We think they are appropriate. And what I'm hearing is a difference of 1 foot to 2 foot along the back. 5 feet on the side is customary in single-family residences, and these have 10. So I think those issues are really well within the bounds of being approvable for this development. I don't have anything else that I can really tell you about it. We think that we've been here enough times, you're probably getting tired of seeing it, but each time there have been changes, and we've tried to accommodate the concerns of the neighbors and in as many ways as we possibly could, and still provide this city with homes that are going to be attractive, livable, and an asset to the community. So if you have any further questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Council members, anyone have questions of the applicant? No, not seeing any. Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, staff, any closing comments? Mr. Crabtree?
I'm available to answer questions, and normally I would do that, but if you'd like me to proactively speak to some of the comments, please. I will. So first, there's some question about the zoning, the regulations. I'd start by saying, our zoning code is about 50 years old and hasn't been comprehensively updated in it. And it speaks to a fairly limited number of types of development. And so we have a plan development zoning process that is a tool that allows for other types of development that weren't anticipated in 1969 to come forward and be entertained by the city. So, when folks speak to, well, the zoning requires this or that, that's the zoning that's in place on the site. It doesn't align with the existing use of single family. It's a multifamily zoning that they're describing, and it has different setbacks in it that don't really relate to the type of development that's being proposed here. What's being proposed is 4 detached single-family homes organized around a court home type development. And we have, as a city, said that we can support that type of development if it goes through a plan development zoning process, and we think in the end that it's appropriate. And we rely upon the general plan, which says what our density should be and how we speak to compatibility. So That's, this is a process, a legitimate process the city has provided for that to go through a plan development zoning request. And so we have a slide that actually spoke to this from the past that's brought up. So just wanted to speak to that briefly. And then secondarily, there's been a lot of conversation about the historical compatibility. And again, I'd just like to reiterate that, should the Pomeroy West and Pomeroy Green at some point in the future be a designated historic district, I see that there's multiple structures, and I think that's the reason for the district approach there. It doesn't include this parcel that the property owners haven't chosen to participate in that, and the existing house wouldn't be seen as contributing to that. So really, the historic rules wouldn't apply to this structure. My opinion, my understanding in this job is that we would not apply the Secretary of Interior standards to any development on this particular site, regardless of the outcome of that application.
Okay, so thank you very much. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Jennifer, would you like us to vote the old-fashioned way? Okay. Oh, please register your vote. And that passes unanimously to close the public hearing. What is the pleasure, Vice Mayor Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. There's definitely a lot of passionate, input and a lot of ideas, the change. But I remember when this came back in March and we listened and, felt like maybe the residents hadn't been heard and we needed to give another opportunity for the developer and the residents to speak again and see if they could work out some differences. And since that time, out of the 13 requests that were made, 9 were taken care of by the developer, and I think that says a lot that the developer was listening. Just what Mr. Crabtree was just talking about regarding the historical application and how that could impact the other properties around there. I agree. I don't see how that could potentially, impact 1075 Pomeroy. I appreciate, that the residents, they're concerned about their, the neighborhood and the Eichlers. But, I really feel that the developer has gone to great lengths to listen and make changes. And from what I can see and what I've heard, I feel like, this is in a good place, and I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve excuse me, let me pull up the language again. Approve the rezoning from low-density multiple dwelling to planned development, and also approve a tentative parcel map to subdivide the subject property to 4 parcels.
Second that.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Mahan?
Thank you. Although I do appreciate the developer's attempts to address some of the issues, the Eichlers are really a very special type of development, and communities are becoming much more aware of their value, not just historic value, but their value as far as what the community wants and what a certain segment of community looks for. I mean, people search out these Eichler homes because they are becoming much more valued. There's only like 11,000 in all of California that were ever built, and they were primarily built in California. It was a California lifestyle development that got very popular in the late 50s, early 60s, the mid-century. Cities like Palo Alto have a really specific, I think it's like 70 some odd pages, guidelines just for development of Eichlers, both redevelopment of Eichlers themselves and development around Eichler neighborhoods. 2 of their Eichler neighborhoods are nationally registered historic districts. But their guidelines call for even adjacent developments to be very compatible with the Eichlers, New home construction in Eichler neighborhoods have guidelines to have similar setbacks, similar roof lines, similar windows, similar building materials, and develop in patterns that originally were developed for Eichlers, because Palo Alto values their Eichlers. I would like to see our city value our Eichlers to the same extent. We do have our own neighborhood guidelines, design guidelines, that have specific guidelines for patio homes. At least it's something. I don't see that this development, proposed development, even meets our own patio home guidelines, which, I mean, I wish we could develop something for Eichlers and for Mackeys, because they are such a specialized form of development, and one that we should preserve, and one that I think the community supports and the public wants. So unfortunately, I can't support this design because I just don't think it's compatible enough with the surrounding Eichlers.
Okay, any other comments? Councilmember O'Neill?
I'm very torn on this because I spent so much time with the residents, and I know, you know, how committed they are to the insights of their project. But it was interesting to hear Ms. Roberts' comments, and she's also a resident there, and you know, doesn't have the same issues. And in part, I feel like, you know, I was, you know, spent a lot of time with that process where we tried to mediate a response, and I did appreciate very much the time that the developer owner put into it. I guess a lot of time, you know, and I certainly know that this is a planned development, and you know, we can create all the rules we want for it. But I do think that, you know, these houses will be popular and will be sold quickly. And even though I wish we could have gotten more movement from the developer to have a little bit more setback, because of the way that these houses are set on the lots, it's not your traditional, typical, say, orientation. And so, you know, it is true that, I mean, I doubt that I've got 10 feet, or probably about that, between my house and the house next to me on the side. It's just the way it's laid out, it's a little funny. So while I wish that there could have been, that we could have gotten more movement on that, I feel like we have had changes in the height, the windows, the roof line, a lot of the windows, you know, just as Andrew Crabtree enumerated, many points of the design of the townhomes. But even though I'm very torn about it, I will support the motion.
All right, thank you. I'm also going to support the motion. I think that the developer has shown great movement. And I appreciate the fact that the group would like to have submitted an application for historical designation, and I don't think we support that. I mean, we do support that. That's wonderful, and I don't think that this development is going to stop that. I also don't think it's reasonable to ask for the development of this project to delay a year or possibly more until there's an outcome from that particular application, because it's such a long process, and it has to have a tremendous amount of buy-in from all the owners of Pomeroy West and Pomeroy Green. So again, I don't think it's reasonable to ask for them to wait for something that I don't think their property is going to have any variance on what that application, you know, ultimately with the owner's buy-in, they will probably be successful in that. So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect development, but I think they've gone a long way to try to be reasonable with the neighborhood. And although it's not perfect, I'm going to go ahead and support it. Any other comments? Please register your vote. And that passes on a 5-1. Thank you. Okay, the next item, we moved up item number 9, which is the discussion and direction to the city manager on an agreement for convention and visitor services with Santa Clara Chamber of Commerce for Convention Visitors Bureau, CVB, or other provider. And there's a list of potential recommendations here. City manager.
We have a couple of slides to present.
Okay.
I just want to provide some background in terms of how we got here and issues of disrupted services that at this point are likely to occur. If you recall, on February 27th, the City Council held a study session.
We'll just wait a minute.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay.
The City Council held a study session on convention center operations. Shortly after that study session, this led to council inquiries about some of the data that it had been presented, which resulted in follow-up meetings, both closed session, obviously council convened closed session, but also resulted in several meetings that began in early April. At the time, the focus of those meetings was on the management of the convention center operations per agreement provisions. Later, as we returned to public session on May 22nd, the council did issue a formal audit for which we had an entrance conference on June 7th for both the Convention Visitors Bureau as well as the Convention Center. I have to note that as early as early April, the city did begin to make document requests, and I can go into those in greater detail through the presentation. However, it wasn't until June 7th where the city felt that the chambers was fully responding to document requests in a productive manner that allowed for us to have fuller information. So there's 2 agreements that are under oversight by the chambers. The first is the management of the convention center. The second is the chamber agreement with CVB, which expires on June 30th. I have some notes on my personal slide. Under audit objectives, as directed by council, there is underway a trend analysis for fiscal health review. The council directed both a performance and a financial audit. Those are all underway, and as I mentioned earlier, responses to informational requests for the audit have been successful to the best of our knowledge. So in terms of current status, the issue that we're discussing this evening is the second bolded item, and that is the agreement with the convention with the chambers to provide convention and visitor services for promoting tourism in the city of Santa Clara and to market the Santa Clara Convention Center. That agreement is executed each year. It has been for for a couple decades, and it's at an amount of about $1.46 million per fiscal year, and it expires June 30th, as I've mentioned. So the purpose of the agreement, as mentioned, is to promote tourism and commerce in Santa Clara, provide group sales and marketing services for the convention center, provide visitor information, and operate a city store. I think at this point it's safe to say, given that it's June 26th and the agreement expires on June 30th, there will be a disruption in services. We have talked internally as well as with the chamber staff that there is no way that from here to June 30th we can enter into contract to prevent any disruption in services. Delays in receipt of information have significantly impacted the city's ability to assess the status of the agreement and whether to recommend or amend it. We have been advised that information that we requested on Thursday may have been inadvertently submitted to the auditor, so we're in process of checking whether our auditor has access to that information. And we did get information as late as 4:40 today from the chamber in response to requests that were dated back in April. The In terms of where we're at, based on some of the information that I will present to you, I do not think it's recommended that we continue any services without a contract in place, meaning that we should not just pay without having a formal agreement in hand. And in fact, you can't. I mean, we said that in the report, but I just want to restate that because there is an expectation or some discussion has already been had in terms of whether the staff impacts at the chambers. Recent compliance from the chamber to provide full access of information for the purpose of inspection of operations and council-directed audits have surfaced issues that we are concerned about. The first are issues of conflicts, training, financial transactions for which we've already had thorough discussions. There are issues with respect to potential self-dealing from fee waivers and discounts, as well as asset inventory. And I want to just walk through some of these issues because they are referenced in the report. These are very basic management oversight documents that we are asking for, that we began to ask for in early April. And for purposes of what we had requested, we started with asking for minutes to assess training, governance. We asked for 990s, which are publicly available, to better understand tax-exempt status, the financials that they were reporting, their compliance, also to look in minutes to see how they manage their 990 status. We asked for minutes to look at oversight of the two contracts and how it would appear over time to better understand these agreements. We did receive 990 tax-exempt filings for a period of many years. We did ask for conflict of interest filings. I think it's important to note that a conflict of interest policy for any organization is probably the most important policy a board can adopt. And we also asked for asset inventory to understand the assets that may have been procured with public funds, so that we better understand just the scope and scale and the assets that are within the CVB. I have to say I have some concerns with respect to the asset inventory. I can share that it is a document that I received today at 4:40. However, in the email transmittal, the information is from a report from 2016 and has been brought relatively current. But what it means to me is that it was readily available in April when I asked. However, it was withheld till 20 minutes before our meeting today, which means there's been no time to review it. And then we also asked for basic information about financials. So with respect to the Chamber's conflict of interest policy, we did request the document. We received over time partial information. There were significant delays with receiving this. And this is important because, as I mentioned, this is one of the most, if not the most important document that a board should maintain with respect to the board members' relationships with financial interest in an organization, as well as how it manages itself under potential or perceived conflicts. Their conflict of interest policy clearly states that they do acknowledge the management of conflicts of interest, but I bring your attention to the second bullet, which says all or perceived conflicts of interest will be disclosed to the appropriate level of authority necessary for consideration. And this is important because during the same course of time, when questions and inquiries were coming following the February 27th study session, new information surfaced that came into the city that caused for the perception of a potential conflict of interest. And so these are some examples that have been presented to the council on potential conflicts of interest. And what we have here is first an email from the chamber sending out to city staff. In this instance, I'm a recipient of a political action committee fundraiser or tournament for the Santa Clara Chamber of Commerce, PAC. And the fact that it's coming from a chamber email caused for some concern and certainly rises to perceived conflict. Here is another one from a staff member who received a similar but different email on a fundraiser from a chamber email. And then we have advertisements from a board member who is receiving revenue and profits from an entity for which he makes policy decisions or oversight decisions as a board member, and has obvious financial decision-making over an authority that revenue may be made. I also want to say that in addition to these conflicts here that surfaced, there is an example of a person holding dual roles, both as a city commissioner and a board member, where there was discussion whether to divert public funds to a board member for purposes of advertising, which also caused for concern. And so we have forwarded those perceived conflicts of interest to the chamber staff and have asked for them for a response, for which they did provide, and we're forwarding that to the auditor. There was significant delay in receiving conflict of interest forms, which means that the maintenance of these policies and the execution is at question. We didn't have access to them for several weeks because we were told they were on a hardware. However, the chamber has responded to the city's request for these actions. As of yesterday, we were told that we have full confirmed access to executed conflict of interest policy statements from the board. There are some irregular observations of maintenance of documents, meaning that when they were executed is later than when board members were in place, and so we want to understand better maintenance of conflict of interest documents. I think the response illustrates that there is an incomplete understanding of the complexities of managing public funds and facilities, possible conflicts of interest based on the information that we've surfaced as examples. However, what's become a little bit more concerning is that when we looked at the 990s that date back to that date back to 2009, and I'll just tell you what the title is. The federally filed 990s are the return of organization exempt from income tax. That means a tax-exempt income status. Under penalty or perjury, they have stated that they do not have a conflict of interest. And so we haven't had an opportunity to ask about the inconsistency between why they presented a conflict of interest policy to us with executed documents when on their federal filings they are stating that they do not have or maintain a conflict of interest policy. We asked about board training around conflict of interest and management of public funds and facilities. While we did receive some training information, we did not receive anything specific to the management of public funds and conflicts surrounding public funds, nor did the minutes show that that any training of that sort had taken place over 12 months. Because they are managing public funds, we did ask them to look into whether there's any Form 700 filing obligations on their part, and it's an area that's still outstanding. So we think that between the inconsistencies of their federal filings over several years, as well as those perceived conflicts, that we do have some perceived issues that need to be resolved before further action is taken. Here's an example from 1990 and these are all publicly available documents of their filing where when asked if they organization has a written conflict of interest, their response is no, and that's been a consistent response all along. We think this is important because of other preliminary observations that are surfacing in the audit around how conflict should be managed, and so this is one place that we immediately started in April. So we have shared with our auditor this PowerPoint so that we represent her observations that she has made early on. And so I just want to state that because these are, if I would, for lack of a better term, auditor confirmed or validated for purposes of bringing forward in the public early on in the audit. So the first audit observation is that there is a longstanding practice since the convention center opened that the chamber on its own initiative grants 20% discounts to all chamber members that rent convention center space. I understand that this may be up to a $1,000 limit per year, but what's important here is that this could be viewed as irregular, and it has certainly not been disclosed to the council with respect to the financials associated with giving 20% discounts. And what this really means is lost revenue to the city And it also can certainly bring forward potential conflicts with managing discounts and fee waivers. We also, as the auditor has provided us by way of preliminary observation, that there is evidence that the chamber grants itself complete discounts on space rental for chamber events and only pays for food and beverage, including major chamber fundraising events providing significant value. And the same issue, and these are the auditor's words, not mine, the same comes forward in terms of the irregular practice of giving complete discounts to itself, especially if there's for purpose of using a public facility for fundraising. And especially since there are requirements in quarterly reports to do financial reporting for which these have never presented themselves, these financial lost opportunities for revenue for the city. So from a preliminary observation standpoint, it's important to understand that these are only observations and that they are preliminary and do not yet constitute formal audit findings. But as we've coordinated and discussed with the auditor, we do believe that it is possible that further document production and audit analysis will substantiate these observations along with more findings. The absence of disclosure of these practices in the required reporting is of concern, meaning that the fact that you are probably learning about this for the first time this evening is something that is worth considering significant. The magnitude of lost revenue to the city is unknown, and the potential conflicts, as I already went into, are also of concern and to be determined. I want to disclose some early surfacing of free use examples under examination. The city owns the facility, and so there could be a position that the city can take that since it's our facility for public benefit, we can authorize free use. Obviously, if there's a determination to use the building, it is relatively disclosed amongst the council or any other use, for instance, like the retreat that we had earlier in January. However, what is concerning is that it appears that Santa Clara Chamber's Political Action Committee has held events at the chamber where fees were waived, meaning that there may be political action fundraising taking place in a public facility, and that should raise concerns, not just from a lack of compliance with the agreement or fee waiver, but there might be some FPPC issues. There might be personal use issues with respect to weddings and graduations, as well as other fundraisers for which fees have not been reported and revenue. We think that there's this is early indications from the auditor that there's 30 to 75 events across the years, and that will certainly come through the audit. So another concern that has surfaced from the 990, and we did try to ask some questions about this, but what we're finding is on 990, rent is being recorded at an amount of about $45,000. You can see it over the trend years. But we do know that from the CVB contract, the city is paying $91,000 per year in rent. And so I'll just show you an example. These are all publicly available documents where the gross rent is recorded as for year 2016 as $44,375, but you are under contract to pay $91,000 per year. So in terms of city concerns, we spent weeks waiting for information. The lack of disclosure of information certainly has delayed the process of where we're at. We didn't get real action until the council initiated an audit, which we began in early June. We do know that there is likely to be a loss of revenue associated with some of the actions that the chamber has taken by doing fee waivers or discounts. We have never been presented with a policy that they maintain in-house. We did ask about whether there was a policy for issuing these fee waivers or discounts. We think that there might be one for nonprofit organizations. To my knowledge, I'm not certain that we've received it. I'm looking at Ruth in the event that we did, so that's no. The chamber's action to benefit board members may constitute self-dealing. The value lost in revenue is unknown, as I've already reported, and there are possible FPPC issues relative to a political action committee receiving waivers or fee discounts and doing political fundraiser in a public facility. The board and chamber staff training or management of public funds and facilities, I think, shows that there's loose oversight. There is a gap in training and upholding public trust with respect to these public funds and disclosures. I think, as I mentioned in the report, that there are significant issues with its ability to manage, prevent, and certainly address issues of conflict or the appearance of. I think the board asset inventory, I hesitate to use the term, but when I opened the email 20 minutes before closed session and saw that the information was a report from 2016, I feel, since I've asked for it since April, that there might be some good faith issues with respect to receiving information that through our own agreements the city's entitled to have, and it has caused unnecessary delays with where we're at today. So with respect to a recommendation, there's the maintain the status quo, which I have recommended that we not do just because of the issues that we've surfaced. You can allow the agreement to expire and direct me to seek another provider of these services and execute contracts. That's a long-term, that would be a disruption in services for a longer term. It would allow for us to test the market and see what type of services are out there and the readiness of a vendor to provide services and address the concerns that have surfaced today. Or you could direct a bridge contract that allows for us 4 months to sort these issues through, allow for the audit to further advance and for us to get more information about the issues that we would need to resolve with the chamber before they continue to take over management of the convention center and CVB opportunities. Or you could issue a bridge contract and direct us to get into contract with another provider. So with that, I'm able to take questions.
Council questions? Councilmember O'Neill.
Well, thank you for all that information. It's a little challenging to absorb all of that. And, once again, it's kind of too bad that, we haven't been doing this all along. We haven't been having, so I certainly don't absolve, the leadership or the executive leadership of the chamber for not, it looks like, we don't know, it looks like perhaps there's some gaps there in some of the management practices, but, it's too bad, we're catching up now, but it's too bad that 20 years ago or more, we weren't doing that as a city. And actually, I did want to make some comments that, there has been comments in the local, by somebody in the local press who is a member of the chamber board about the audit that happened 20 years ago. And so I've been doing research with staff to find out what happened in the 1990s on previous audits and the question of a performance audit that actually then Councilmember Gilmore had requested. And I wanted to see the reports so I could see what was happening then, what was going on. And staff was able to dig out of the system minutes from 1993, and actually it appears that the performance audit never happened. It got voted down. And so it was like, there have been comments that the city spent $100,000 then and wasted money and was going to be wasting, continuing to waste money now. What was authorized at the last minute when the RFP was going to be, apparently from reading the minutes, when the RFP was going to be authorized, one of the council members at the time just changed their vote. And so what happened was an internal audit. And so members of staff are trying to find it. They've gotten me a couple of agenda reports where there was, a fairly general, it was a review that was going to be done by members of the finance staff at that time, so it wasn't an outside accounting agency or it wasn't an audit of the performance audit category that we're having now. So unfortunately, we don't have a baseline. Not that that would be all that, it wouldn't be directly related, but it would at least give us a sense of where we were before. But so now, so now for the first time, we're having an outside audit happen. So we've got a lot of work to do here. So one of my questions was when I saw some of the ads that were placed in local newspaper, and do we know like how many employees for the CVB, are dedicated employees to the CVB and not like chamber employees, but that are actually, because I'm in terms of being able to make a decision here, and we do want to have business continue to flow to the convention center. But even it was a little concerning when we had the report from the consultant with JLL, Mr. Fenton, I think it was, back in February, about what was in the pipeline. And so I was a little confused as to, was the CVB responsible for doing all the bookings into the convention center? And so I don't want to, do something that's going to like cut off our flow of revenue completely, but, so like how many employees are we talking about that are actually doing the day-to-day work of bringing business into the convention center? And I realize also they are promoting the hotels and the restaurants and other attractions.
So we have 13 employees that are employed by CVB, and there's 2 that are funded through the TID.
So for a total of 15?
That's the total, budget or authorized count. I don't know whether there's any vacancies. It sounds like I heard 14 come from the audience.
Okay. And so the TID is strictly funded by tax dollars, correct? The monies that are generated through the hotel taxes and have been under contract given to the CVB for further promotion. So we've got 15 or 16 employees that are working full-time. So, is that correct?
It sounds as if we have 15 authorized positions. I would ask the chamber or CVB to respond to how many positions are filled and what's the number status.
Because what I'm thinking somewhat is looking at, like, have we had a breakdown of how much of the costs, how much of the funds that we're paying are personnel costs versus how much are for advertising or marketing promotion or, those kinds of things, which would be the actual, I realize that all these groups are personnel intensive.
Yeah. So we do have information. It was a question that we did ask as part of this process on the salary information for the employees. So we would be able to produce that information for council. Ruth is looking at it right now.
Mayor and council and city staff, I'm Annette Manhart, and I've been working for the the Convention and Visitors Bureau for over 15 years. We have currently right now 14 staff members, work very hard and are very dedicated, and we focus our energies on bringing business into this city. 2 of our employees are paid from the TID funds.
Out of the 14?
Out of the 14.
Okay, thank you. We have that information.
Okay, thank you, Annette.
So to respond to your question, Councilmember O'Neill, so what was submitted as far as the budget is concerned from the CVB was a annual salary amount of $1.235 million.
Okay, so out of the 1.5 million approximately, and then the, what was it, 700,000 or 800,000 for TID?
There's about, that's correct, about $700,000 to $800,000 that comes from the TID every year.
Okay. So do we have an idea, have we seen do we have an idea, does all of the bookings that come in for, say, even if someone's having a banquet or a dinner as opposed to, say, a major show, does that all come in through the CVB, or does some of that get booked through the general manager's staff?
So I think what's important to understand is we did receive some projected bookings from our consultant in February. There were some charts that were provided in terms of perspective and targets for contracts. We did request information about what are their events under contract, what's under negotiations, and what's prospective. That's information that we received today, I believe. And so I'm not able to answer questions in terms of quantifying. That's part of the issue here is, as we stated in the report, the analysis of impact to disruption is we can't quantify it because we're barely getting information in from last week's request. We do have a meeting, though, scheduled for Thursday to further debrief and meet with the chamber staff on any action that you take this evening. So we would be able to, after that meeting, quantify more what the impacts will be in the near term.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now anyway.
Any other council members, questions of
Yeah,
city manager? Councilmember Mahan, you have a question?
I think so. Oh, yeah, I had my equivalent of my light on.
I don't see anything, so.
Oh, shows here. At any rate, so how feasible would it be to get some new management in place by July 1st?
It's impossible at this time.
Pardon?
We can't even, it would be impossible at this time, especially now given the court order and the reprioritization. We would not even be able to get into contract with the chamber by July 1st.
So is there any grave disadvantage for just extending the existing status quo for this 4-month period as you suggested while you work through all of these issues?
There's I have some concerns as I expressed. These are just early findings based on actually now starting to receive documents that we've been able to surface. And frankly, as Ruth and I put the PowerPoint presentation together over the last 24 hours, the collective magnitude of them, I think you should be concerned. These early findings are certainly signaling some significant issues that we would need to manage with the chamber. You need to decide if that's something that the council wants to continue in form of relationship. The benefit is that if you did go forward with the 4-month contract, you continue to receive audit information, such as the observations that have already been shared from our auditor for purposes of what areas would need to be improved and fixed. So you would literally be getting fed information along the way to get the chamber board and the chamber staff in a position to more fully function for this contract. It's a decision and a policy decision that you would need to make.
But what would be, so if the contract just expired, who would perform the duties that our CVB does now, that our convention center does now? I mean, who would perform these duties? Who would manage contracts that are in existence for events at the convention center? Who would manage the hotel reservations, the events that are all already in place, and those that might come in the next few months?
So those in the report, I do ask for the ability to execute documents if needed, if that's a direction that you would want to go in with another vendor. And I certainly could report back to the council
I just asked
of that
if that's
action.
feasible by July 1st, and you said no.
No, there's nothing is feasible by July 1st. I've said that whether it's with the chamber or whether it's with a new provider. So that's just already established. There is going to be a disruption in services, as I said early on in the presentation. There's just no way to avoid it at this point in time. It would have been nice to receive information at the time when the city was asking. I cannot, from June 7th and now up till 4:40, produce information so that we could have a stable service. But if there is an action by the council to continue with the chamber, we do have a transition meeting on Thursday, and we can answer questions around disruption of service. We talked about last week if the chamber contract, the bridge contract, were to continue, we would estimate about 30 days or more, just slightly more, to get into a new contract. I do want to relook at that because of the new work associated with the court order and how we're going to redirect capacity and resources in my office. But there will, for 30 days at minimum or slightly plus, there will just be no services provided.
That really doesn't seem like a good solution.
Well, let me be really clear to this. We asked for information in April. You sat here and as a council, you direct, I'm just, Councilman Mahan, you're asking a question, and I'm not going to professionally pretend as if it is an assignment of blame on the part of city staff. Information was withheld, and I just professionally cannot take I cannot take the assignment of blame that there's a gross disruption in services.
No, I'm sorry. No, I don't.
We've been very clear that this is where this was headed.
I do not mean to imply that at all. From a public's point of view, from those people who are expecting service from our convention center, from our CVB, those people who have events booked, how is that going to be handled from the public's point of view? And how do we overcome that hurdle? Is there not some methodology where we can simply extend an existing contract even for a few months, leaving things in place while we work through? I'm not even suggesting that I'm arguing with the need to work through all of these issues. But what I'm saying is sometimes you have to weigh the grave disadvantage over, some advantage to the public. And that's my question is, how do we serve the public?
Yeah. Then I would respectfully say that that's a question that the chambers would need to answer. And clearly they had to have thought this through for the several weeks that they did not produce the information that we were requesting, and had to have known this would be a consequence. I would imagine that if there is a bridge contract for that 30 to perhaps 45-day period of time, they would want to bridge themselves those services so that when we do have a successful bridge contract for a period of 4 months, we would be able to pick up where we left off. And we talked about that. We talked about whether they would provide provisions for the staff so that the staff wouldn't be impacted. But I just can't answer that because it's not anything that I have been very clear that there would be a disruption of service on our part.
Thank you.
City Attorney and then Councilmember O'Neill.
Council, Mayor, I just have to caution you that what we've uncovered through the little information that we have been able to get, these are very serious matters about the use of public funds, and I could not in any way recommend simply extending the current agreement. I mean, there would have to be built in some very strong safeguards. This is the use of public funds for transfer to political activities. This is serious stuff, and it needs to be looked at. Also, the self-dealing needs to be looked at. The undisclosed nature of these discounts and freebies. The ads to directors' businesses. These are all very serious matters. And I don't see how you could just simply extend the agreement and pretend that this level of serious misconduct has not taken place. I think that there would have to be some level of transparency and forthrightness built into whatever future contracts you had where you're spending public money for an organization that clearly does not seem to understand its responsibilities as a nonprofit and its contractual obligations as an agent of a principal to faithfully and in good faith disclose what it's doing with the principal's money.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate those comments, Mr. City Attorney. So getting back to one of my thoughts, so we have two agreements with the Chamber of Commerce. One is for the operation of the convention center, and one is for the operation of the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So those are two separate agreements. And at one point, I guess this is my mistake, I thought actually that the employees of the CVB were going to report to the Convention Center General Manager, Lisa Moreno, but I guess that didn't happen. So one of my, so I guess that's still true, that the CVB is being managed somewhat separately than the actual day-to-day operations of the Convention Center.
The structure explained to us is that they are separate, but the Convention Center General Manager has a functional oversight over the CVB, and they can better explain that structure.
Okay, so so if there are a lot of events that are already booked, and perhaps General Manager Moreno can speak to this, you know, my assumption is she has staff that for events that are already booked, I mean, that's what they do every day, is manage events that are already booked and are, you know, scheduled to happen, so that for those people who are planning to have meetings or various events, or are you suggesting that, are you now, you know, I don't know what your view is, or if you've even had a chance to look at the contract with the, you know, or the contract that's been in place for decades with the convention center. You know, are we kind of bifurcating our concern, even though knowing that in the background there's probably some issues? So I just want to make sure. We're only talking about the CVB at this point. We're not talking about the actual day-to-day operation of the convention center.
The matter before you is the CVB agreement, and it expires on June 30th.
Right. Okay, so that so perhaps when council questions are done, we can have Lisa Moreno come up and talk a little bit about that. But like I said, I'm assuming that the staff that she has at the convention center would continue to manage events that are already booked. That's what I'm assuming.
Do we know what events are booked, what's pending?
We just received a schedule earlier today, so we have that information available to us, but we've not had time to study it and understand.
Thank you. My question is, was all this information requested in April?
No, we started with information around conflicts of interest and asset inventory. Those are generally the first places to start with management oversight. And then from there, we did ask for additional information. But when it became clear that there would be a disruption of services, we pushed for the information about scheduled events. Last Thursday is when we asked for it.
Do we have copies of the conflict of interest forms?
We were able to confirm on Monday that we now have complete conflict of interest forms from the chamber. They came in partially over time.
Okay. Are there any other questions of the council? It's not working, so you just have to jump in. Vice Mayor Watanabe.
Thank you. I just want to clarify on slide 20, the Form 990 revenue rent for real property. And yeah, there we go. Okay, the open discussion item on rental income. Now, it shows there's 4 different years, and it shows the 990. Am I understanding that the Form 990 showed those amounts, but yet the money that we were paying to the CVB, according to the CVB contract, was the amount that is in that column?
This is an area that I think is worth understanding more through part of the audit. But under their federal filing, under rental revenue, they have recorded the amounts on the previous chart, slide 20, as rental revenue. Under the CVB contract, the city is paying $91,000 per year. I should also state that we did ask about this yesterday, about how was rental cost distributed in the facility, because we wanted to better understand the other uses in the building and what we would anticipate looking at with respect to distribution of rental cost. But we are aware through their own public documents that they have recorded on federal documents that they receive $46,000 of rental revenue, when we know through our agreements there's $91,000. It is an issue for us to reconcile.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Do we know what percentage of the building the CVB occupies? What the mortgage payments
I asked
are?
that yesterday, and perhaps they have the information available to respond.
So presumably the city's paying rent for the CVB portion of the chamber building. Right. Is that correct?
That's what we talked about in terms of the CVB function, what percent of the facility did it occupy, and how were rental costs distributed. And so they may have additional detail, but they did confirm that it was a significant part of their facility.
And those employees that are CVB employees, are they strictly CVB, or do they also work for the chamber or the PAC?
I don't know.
We don't know. Excuse me, please, you can all come up and talk. Okay, all right. We don't know if they're full-time or part-time? We don't have any of that?
They would have to answer those questions.
Short on information. Okay. Any other council members? Yes, Councilmember O'Neill.
So on the issue of the space rental, once again, I guess maybe this was, I thought we had, maybe some of the other council members, I thought we had all talked about a few years ago that the CVB was going to move out to the convention center and use space there that the city had, rather than us having to pay rent. So I guess maybe that didn't happen.
Obviously not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? I know there's members of the public that would like to speak. Do we have members of the chamber that would like to come forward? I don't have the card, so if you just line up, please.
I want to speak first. They're going to hit me, I'm sure, but I want to speak as an individual, not as a member of the chamber. I am a new board member on the chamber, but I'm not authorized to say what I'm about to say, and they may get a hook and hit me. As you all know, we now have a new CEO and president, Nick, who comes to us being incredibly well-trained, but he's brand new. We have a huge change in the board members, and we have much more of a serious, shall we say, commitment by members of the board than had happened in the past. So as an individual, I want to beg you to not punish the future and not punish innocent people, such as the people that work for the CB, whatever it is, because of what may or may not, we don't know yet, been malfeasance in the past. It's certainly true that there's been chaos at the chamber until Nick was brought in. So I'm begging you as an individual, don't blame those people that are blameless. I mean, don't harm those people that are blameless.
Thank you. Nick.
Hello, Mayor and Council. So I'll start knocking down some of these issues here. Now, a lot of these issues were covered with the consultant today, who spent 8 hours at our office that we're going through, and so a lot of these the auditor does have, but I'll just start going through the list here. The Form 990s here, that's an interfund transfer between the same entity, and so when you're claiming on the taxes, it doesn't show. Now, Dave, if you want to speak more to that, you can.
Yeah. And I do have some disagreements with the report and with staff I'd like to at least share with you from our perspective. As far as the income being different, the CVB, I'm an accountant, so if I talk too much accountant, you stop me. And the chamber are one. They're operating under the same entity. So you wouldn't show the income from the CVB because they're one entity. The income you're looking at, the difference, the smaller amount, is for other spots in the building that are rented out that are not chamber, part of the chamber organization. So there's a tax preparer, there's some others. That's the 40,000 you're looking at. If we would have been asked that, we would have gladly explained that to staff. And there's a number of things they said that are just inaccurate that we'd like to explain.
So for the time, is this not? Are we not an appellant on this? Do we get more time for this?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Speak.
So speaking to the advertising from the PAC in our newsletter, in our e-blast that we send out, and I've said this before, and I'll say this: the PAC. There is no donations or anything given to the PAC. The PAC has paid for those advertising like many other members do. We get about 3 members a month that would like to that pay for advertising in our newsletter, and we treat the PAC just like every other member that pays for those advertising. And we have provided the auditor with that information for that also. So no, there is no funds transferred to the PAC in any way, and all this information was given to the auditor. In terms of the conflict of interest policy, we'll start with the ads in the Santa Clara Weekly. Those Santa Clara Weekly ads were taken out, and they were reviewed by 3 managers and disclosed to 3 managers prior to it taken to a board official that who then signed off on it. And in those 3, it was a fair market price for that. It was not influenced by the board. That portion of that advertising was approved as a larger portion of a much bigger marketing plan. That the payment for those advertisings was 1/3% of the total CVB budget for the year. And so it was part of an overall plan, and so it wasn't a self-dealing as much as it was them using all means to market Santa Clara. And to speak more about that, there was I believe it was 3 events, 2 or 3 events, and I know Annette can talk that from people that called in and said that they saw the advertising and wanted to book their events at the convention center. So it was looked at as a conflict, and it was decided amongst us that it was not a conflict because they were using it as part of several other marketing tools, and there was a great ROI on that. And so in talking to that, I just want to say that that as the leader of the organization here, I am sorry that the information took so long. We were going through a transition. We were working with 2 city consultants. The initial request for our conflict of interest policy was given, and then it was a follow-up request to us to provide all the signed conflict of interest policies after the fact. And that took some time during the transition period. It took time to follow up and find the conflict of interest policies. However, they were signed and they were in an email address that we no longer have access to. And so that's where it was. But I do know that we manage conflict of interest, and we look at that very seriously. In terms of board training, we started our board training beforehand, and it fell off the agenda when our agendas got really packed, and we are implementing them again starting this fiscal year. We've even gone so far as asking to ask the city for your guys' board or your guys' training on use of public funds so we could align our organization closely with your guys' organization or with the city, so then we could be speaking the same language. We know that there has been concerns in the past about this, and we are working to fix this. But I'll say this again, there has been we manage conflict of interest, and we look at we take the use of public funds very seriously, and I can say since my time has been here that we take it very seriously, and I know the CVB staff does an amazing job at what they do. And so I really don't think we should punish the CVB staff for this level of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go on, I just need to add an inconsistency. So we just had the president CEO saying that they provided fair market pricing for the ads. Their conflict of interest response to the city, I quote unquote, Chamber board member Miles Barber complied with this policy by giving a chamber for the advertising a 30% discount on all advertising. I'll let the city attorney speak to issues of conflict from there.
I'm sorry, then let me correct myself here. When we went out to find the best means of using that segment, that what came back as the best price and the best way to reach that amount of people. And so in reviewing the different options we had, that came back as the best price. So.
Thank you.
One of the things I'd like to address is the PAC. I heard there's some concern as far as misuse of funds. We file all the required filings for the Fair Political Practice Commission, and we file an extra copy with the city clerk. All the paperwork that you want for the PAC has been in City Hall the entire time we've been filing it and giving it and staff could have had access to that anytime they wanted to. And we provided that so they could look at it. As far as, there was a couple other things. The auditor that you hired for the performance audit, she's never done an audit of a Chamber of Commerce. That's why I asked her, because I have some concerns, because Chamber of Commerce are unique to other nonprofits and that they promote business, and it's a membership promoting using each other's business to grow that business, and that's part of their mission statement. So I'm a little bit concerned as far as that goes. As far as the conflict of interest, I know that we had them at audit time because the auditor collected them all and told me she had them. As far as the tax return and any other concerns you have, we're more than happy for you to talk to the auditor because the convention center hasn't had an audit, which I guess was a responsibility of the city over the last 10 years. But every year we have had one, and we make sure that the items that they recommend get done and follow through to do the best job we can. So I would suggest talking to them, and you might build some faith up in that we're not misleading anything. The information is just there. It's an understanding of what to do. I think that covers the main. Oh, one more thing, the data. When we met with staff about 10 days ago, I said, is there any data that we're missing? Because I was concerned with that. And the answer I got from the city manager was, look through the emails. I don't know what it is, but if you look through the emails, you'll find them. And that's when I went to Ruth and I said, we need some kind of list because we want to make sure we got everything for you. And I can tell you the date and time if you want that.
Mr. Tompkin asked me for a list after the audit conference, and I stated to him that we did not have the list nor time to comprise a list, but that the information would request could date back to early April, and that if he worked with chamber staff, he would be able to compile the information that we had been requesting. So I didn't think the burden was on me to make a list for them to comply, that it was in overtime and through a period of staff meetings.
I just want to make it clear that we've been asking and been trying to comply with everything. This last thing, as far as the fixed assets, was a listing that was actually used for property tax, but we're trying to compare that to the income tax return to see if there's any differences, because an income tax return, you might not count anything as a fixed asset under $500, whereas a property tax statement, you might pick up something for $20. So they're not completely consistent, but we were trying to give them the best information that we have and go through it and compile it, but that's what we've been doing. Okay?
Thank you.
I want to clarify, because I do not want to be mischaracterized, and I did surface the issues of lack of documentation, which is why I believe Councilmember Davis, as part of her motion, had directed that I receive information. I have to say that even with requesting publicly available 990s, it was Mr. Tompkin himself who stated that he did not want to produce them. And I thought for streamlining that they should be able to produce them since they were publicly available, and made that note. So I just don't want to appear as if we have not been diligent, and I want to be clear in characterizing that we really did have issues and still have had issues getting information to make informed decisions and provide you with that information.
Thank you, and I think you've kept us informed all along. Yes.
The requested 990s, and we did submit them, but the requested were including the attachments, and I believe it is 990T or F, which are not publicly produce information for 501c6s like we are as a chamber, but they are for 501c3s for charitable nonprofits. And so we looked at that, and that was part of the concern, but we did provide all the attachments that were requested that were not public.
Okay. Yes.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Jacqueline Yepez. I've been working in the event industry for about 25 years now, director of events at one of the high-tech companies here. I've worked with several high-tech companies here, including companies like NVIDIA, Sun Microsystems, Siebel Systems, Silicon Graphics. The list goes on. I want to just let you know that I work very closely with CVBs for a very specific reason. I have the opportunity to work with a lot of agencies to book multi-million-dollar programs. I choose to go with CVBs predominantly because they do not have the interest of just making money. They actually have our interest at hand, which is first and foremost what I'm looking for in a partnership with anybody that I'm working with directly. I've been working with Santa Clara on several programs. We have been there now the last, I think, 5 years at the Santa Clara Convention Center. We plan on returning in 2019, which we're already under contract for. We're currently working on negotiating a new contract for 2020. I really hope that that does not get interrupted. And so what I just want to say is that I don't believe that this is a CVB issue itself. I'm sure there are plenty of other things that you folks have to deal with. But I can tell you that with my dealings with the CVBs in general, they've been extremely positive. They've been a huge attribute to what we do. They not only help us with renting out space that we need for our convention, but we also work directly with them on all the hotels that we book. My program last year was about $2.8 million. My program for the coming year is going to be over $3 million. So we would like to continue to work with them. And as I said, they've been a huge asset to us. So I think that there probably are some other concerns that you have. I don't think it's a CVB. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Gilmore and City Councils and City Manager. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I am Diana Ding from Ding Ding TV, and we are the organizer of Silicon Valley Entrepreneurs Festival and also G50 Smart City Global Summit. I'm here to support Annette and her team because, you know, they played a very important role bringing the multicultural and international business to Santa Clara. We had our first Silicon Valley Entrepreneur Festival in Redwood City, and Annette was the one to help us brought this event to Santa Clara Convention Center. Compared with 5 years ago, you can tell there are more and more Asian group organize their event in Santa Clara Convention Center. I would say that this year, probably more than 50%. And CVB did a great job, introduce our city and promote our city. So actually, they brought business and people to the city and benefit the hotels, restaurants, and other business. So I do agree with Dr. Ellen Diamond that why we're here tonight is to work together with our city to make a better future for city of Santa Clara. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor Gilmore, and City Council and City staff. My name is Lisa Morano, and I'm the General Manager at the Santa Clara Convention Center. And we understand why we are at this junction, as we have all identified there are changes necessary to move forward as an organization and partner of the city. As there have been 2 recommendations put forth by the City Manager, we respectfully request that the Council vote for option number 3B, the bridge agreement with funding, which would provide the Chamber and City the opportunity to look forward and negotiate an agreement that works best for the Chamber, City, and stakeholders. Should the Council choose option number 2, allowing the agreement to expire on June 30th, 2018, I would hope you understand the negative ramifications of such a decision. the most important of which is the dedicated, hardworking, and longstanding employees losing their jobs come this Friday. As in the city manager's report to council states, under this scenario, the existing contractual relationship with the Chamber of Managing the CVB operations would end, and there would be no contractual services provided as of July 1st, 2018, until the city approved contract for these services with a new service provider. The CVB is a vital part of promoting and marketing our destination, focusing on the convention sales, tourism, marketing, and services. They have been the center's marketing arm for 32 years, bringing in hundreds of thousands of visitors and millions of dollars of indirect and direct spending. Convention and Visitors Bureau are the most important tourism marketing organizations in their respective tourist destinations, as they are directly responsible for marketing the destination brand through travel and tourism, product awareness to visitors. Their service visitors and clients to just about any way you can imagine. When someone is looking for a destination, one of the first places they look is within the CVB. If we have a disruption in business, we're looking, may I continue?
Yes, shortly. We have a long line behind you.
A potential loss of business, tarnished reputation that could take years to reclaim. If you recall, due to the dissolution of the RDA, we had a stopgap in booking the center, which resulted loss of business, hotels, and industry-related businesses. Our teams have successfully worked together for 32 years and have created a world-class business model with outstanding reputation, building strong relationships with the clients, city staff, and stakeholders, and it would be disheartening, to say the least, if you decide to dissolve the current CVB. Again, we understand that a new agreement is necessary and important. As such, we respectfully request that you understand the importance of voting for option 3B. I am confident that this is the right choice for all. I would be remiss if I did not thank the city for the opportunity afforded to us over the past 32 years to build these relationships and build the team who has made us who we are today, a team I am very proud to stand behind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I had a question of that speaker, and my button's not working. Ms. Moreno, how many events are booked in the next couple of months, and what will happen to them if this contract is gone?
For the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has the task of booking events with hotel rooms. So again, there is the information compiled that Annette can probably speak more clearer to as it relates to the CVB contracts that are working on over the next several months. But as mentioned with our client that came up and spoke, there is the contractual negotiations that take place over time. There's letter of intents, there's tentatives, so those need to be followed through with, as well as contracted services. And then the Convention Center, to answer some questions that came up earlier, we do book business that has no hotel rooms. So that's the business we book internally.
So if this current contract expired on the 30th, what happens going forward?
Well, then we would have to find a way to pick up that stopgap on the Convention Center side, at which this time we don't have staff to fulfill all those needs. We have at least 4+ sales managers over at the CVB who are working on those types of businesses.
So if they're not there, the work doesn't get done, the events fall apart, they don't get booked?
As we've discussed, there would be a stopgap and a disruption in business, and yes, we could lose business that is being worked on right now. So that is definitely a potential liability, yes.
Thank you. Please come forward, and then I have some other cards, Peter Roberts, Ravinder Lal, and Sashi Nand. Yes.
Good evening again, Mayor, City Council, and staff. Again, my name is Annette Manhart, and I've been with the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Santa Clara for over 15 years. I've worked in San Jose at the Convention and Visitors Bureau for over 13 years, and I have 4 years of hotel background plus other industry backgrounds. In just 3 days, I'm at risk of losing my job along with 13 other CVB dedicated, hardworking employees who love this city and sell this city every single day. Convention and Visitors Bureaus were established in Detroit, Michigan in the late 19th century to assist conventions and delegate demands and needs. Today, Convention and Visitors Bureau are in every major city in the world, and over 100 of them are here in the state of California. And new ones are coming every day, from the smaller CVBs to the larger major cities. For nearly 45 years, and 32 of those years were with selling the convention center. But we sold the whole city for over 45 years, your CVB, we have sold the city of Santa Clara to those who had never heard of us or even thought to come here. Who will market and sell the city and service our visitors and meeting planners when we are gone? Your Convention and Visitors Bureau is a service-based organization and the only sales and marketing vehicle designed to sell the city of Santa Clara as a destination for conventions, conferences, meetings, and special events. Your CVB has successfully sold our convention center, hotels, attractions, and entertainment venues, and serviced thousands of meeting planners, delegates, and visitors for many, many, many years. Successfully, I might add. Through our efforts, our group bookings average, and this is the actualized from what we book, average over $128 million in economic impact value. May I continue with this? These are actuals too, and this formula is our industry and our international industry formula for calculating this number. We've also booked and have produced over $8 million in gross convention center revenue. That's what our team does. And $14 million in gross hotel room night revenue. That doesn't even include what we bring to the hotels for food and beverage and their meeting room rental or any incidentals. We also generate over $1.4 million in city taxes on average each year. That includes the TOT, the TID, and the CFD tax, not to mention city tax. Who will do this when we're gone? Your CVB is a service to the community, not a drain, but a service to the community. We provide many services to our meeting planners and delegates and connect them with our local businesses whenever possible. Convention and group business feeds our city of Santa Clara by sleeping in our hotels, eating in our restaurants, shopping in our shopping centers, visiting our museums, and enjoying the attractions and entertainment venues. Conventions and group business bring much to a city and substantial revenue to Santa Clara and our local businesses. In fact, this fiscal year to date, and we're not finished yet.
You'll have to wrap it up soon.
Okay,
Annette.
I just have two more paragraphs.
Yeah.
Our CVB team has exceeded all of our qualitative and quantitative goals and has generated an estimated $17 million in future gross hotel revenue and nearly $7 million in convention center gross revenue, and over $2 million so far this year in TOT, TID, and CFD taxes. Our employees are passionate about Santa Clara. We think Santa Clara every single day. We take great pride in our work that we do for our city and are proud of all of our accomplishments, as you should be.
Thank you,
The
Annette.
Santa Clara Convention and Visitors Bureau is not a liability. We are necessary for the city of Santa Clara, and we hope that you will see our value and vote to extend us for 4 more months.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank you.
Linder?
Good evening, council and mayor. Got to stop meeting like this. That being said, I'm a local business owner. I own 2 businesses in Santa Clara. I'm in the process of purchasing the UPS store inside the convention center. First thing I have to say is thank you to the CVB staff. I mean, you guys are amazing, world class, do just an amazing job. I see them in action every day now, and this city is lucky to have them and to risk their employment with any kind of gap would be silly to risk losing good people. Secondly, I want to address the city attorney who I don't know if you guys realize, but we're a volunteer board and we are having our names dragged through the mud. We have done nothing wrong. We don't self-deal. We are trying to help the business community here. We're trying to help each other grow. And that's the point of the chamber, is to help business. So for you to sit here and say that we're self-dealing and we're doing all these nefarious things, I'm gonna be happy when the audit comes out and shows that we haven't done anything of the sort. We've been called cronies in local publications. These are the most giving people I have ever met in my life on this chamber board. All of you are in the community as well. You know we give back. We give back to every nonprofit in this city. We generate sales tax, TOT tax, everything else. And you know what? I've been made to feel ashamed that I'm part of an organization that is giving back to this community, and to have our names dragged through the mud. I'm just not happy about it, and I know most of you, and this is what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, our city manager, and the members of the public here. I am a proud resident of city of Santa Clara. This is my city. Our chamber has walked and talked to each business, and the comments we received, this is the only chamber who comes and takes care of us. In addition to that, let me introduce my name. My name is Sashinand. My business name is SNS Gifts, and I am here to report on the success of our Convention Visitors Bureau, CVB. According to a respected, accredited industry economic calculator from Destinations International, the CVB has produced over $90 million of economic impact for the city of Santa Clara this past fiscal year. This includes a minimum of $1.3 million trackable city tax revenue. Please extend fiscal year 2018-19 funding of the CVB for a minimum of 4-month time period as recommended by our city manager. This funding will provide for the continued work of the CVB in promoting our city and attracting visitors and convention delegates to our destination. Leaders, today we are very humbly requesting you for a favorable consideration for those leaders here which are without borders.
Thank you. Please come forward. Good evening. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. First, I want to affirm that it's your right and your duty to choose the management for the CVB as you see fit. I urge you, it is a business decision, and I urge you to consider the bridging option for a couple reasons. One, it will give you the time to hear from your other consultants. I know JLL has given you the costs, and I understand they're prepared publicly to give you the benefits, which is, when you make a decision, you got to weigh the costs and benefits. And you have another consultant waiting to advise you too. Also, it gives you a chance to deal with some of the unintended consequences. And I would like to basically speak to the employees. You know, we have very good employee staff at the CVB. And I was talking to an employee of 27 years, and he's concerned, as you heard before, that 27 years and he might get 3 days notice and lose his job. These employees represent relationships with the businesses and your customers, and we're building relationships. We lose an employee, you could lose hundreds of relationships that we built over the years, which is an economic value. And if you bridge it, it gives us time to, gives the chamber time and the city manager time to work on a severance agreement for all these people. So if they do leave, that they'll be getting appropriate compensation. And with a severance agreement in place, when you bridge it, and if you choose another manager, which looks like that's the path that we're on, it'll give you opportunity to keep these employees, because if they're let go, they'll have a severance package. So I just assume to just do this so help you make a better business decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Come forward. Good evening. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm David Andre with CVB. Good morning, Mayor and Council, City staff. As you know, I've worked passionately for the CVB for a long time, over 2 decades. Starting in the building on El Camino near the St. Clair statue, which was a visitor center when I started. From there, I moved to the CVB's Lafayette, San Tomas office, and now down the street at the Chamber. Please accept the recommendation for 4-month bridge funding for the CVB. Without it, myself and the entire CVB staff will be out of a job in just days. Our dedicated staff does not deserve this. Our community does not deserve this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Good morning, Mayor Gilmore, Vice Mayor, City Council, and City staff. First, I want to thank you all for what you do for us, for the City of Santa Clara and its people. My name is Rachel Mata Castaneda. I'm the Director of Sales at the Santa Clara Convention and Visitors Bureau. I have the privilege of promoting and selling the City of Santa Clara as the premier destination for our meeting planners, for large conventions, meetings, and trade shows, which generate millions of dollars in tax revenue for the City of Santa Clara. My combined tenure with the CVB and Convention Center is 8 years, and in those 8 years, I developed my career and started my family, my husband and my 2 kids. For the second time working with the CVB, I'm experiencing disappointment of losing my job as early as this Friday. I must admit, I left the organization about 3 years ago when the RDA issue came, for the uncertainty of not having a job to pay my mortgage and support my family. I returned because I strongly believe in the mission of the CVB, and largely because working for the CVB is fun. I love working for the CVB, and I love sharing the City of Santa Clara to the world. When you make your decision tonight, please keep in mind that there are 14 people affected by your decision. Our livelihood sits in your hands, and I strongly urge you, at the very least, to decide on the bridge contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please come forward.
Good morning, Mayor and Council and City staff. My name is Daryl Zape, and I work for the Santa Clara CVB. If I may, I would like to play a short video for you guys on behalf of the hospitality business leaders.
Is it a video? Is it a video?
Yes, it's a short video.
My relationship with the Santa Clara CVB actually goes way back. I've known members of the CVB, Annette and David, for the last 10 years since I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce. They help bring the Super Bowl to the city. They help bring WrestleMania to the city.
Santa Clara is lucky to have that group of individuals helping us fill hotels and stadiums and convention centers. They do a great job of partnering with us and trying to bring world-class events to this facility. It's kind of a nice kinship to be able to kind of work together as we have.
They're making us current and present, and they're allowing us to compete with the tertiary cities that are trying to win that business as well. So they're going to trade shows and they're talking to clients about why they would want to come to Santa Clara. They're very much our champions.
A lot of people don't realize what a CVB does. They're really partners with the hotels and with all the members of the community. They're the ones that are really instrumental in marketing the destination and kind of getting the word out, whether it be to meeting planners or to leisure guests, why they should come to Santa Clara and all that we have to offer.
Santa Clara has attracted over the years an incomparable mix of very strong companies that have grown and continue to grow here. And the city government itself is a really great organization that is welcoming to newcomers, forward-thinking about how to grow the city thoughtfully.
This is just a fantastic group of people, fantastic group of salespeople that really promote the city of Santa Clara and bring new business to the town, which is what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, please come forward.
Good morning, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Councilman, Council member, excuse me. My name is Leroy Godfrey. I'm an operating partner for Fleming Steakhouse in Santa Clara Square. And just over a year ago, I became a chamber member and involved in the CVB, and they helped us kind of get our business running off the ground. They also I did a commercial with them promoting our partnership that we have with them. And I saw a spike in business right off the get-go off that. And what I feel is I became good friends with quite a few of the staff members, and 14 employees will lose their jobs come at the end of this month if this happens. These employees do nothing but hard work and bring business and service the visitors to this wonderful city of Santa Clara. It is a huge human part, a huge human impact that should be not ignored. If I beg and I ask to extend that 4-month contract, or 4-month, I'm a little nervous. It's the first time speaking to a council, so sorry.
That's okay. You can take your time. You're doing fine.
But let's provide that bridge for them. They have done wonders for our business in a short time. We've been here less than a year, and already our business has excelled and beat projections this year so far. And I credit them, especially with that commercial that we did. I got phone calls instantly, who we are. They didn't know we're here. They didn't know about Santa Clara Square. It promoted all the restaurants, all of that, and it's going to get bigger as we grow in that area. The community deserves it, and again, thank you for that.
And your food is delicious. Okay.
Thank you.
Thinking about it now. All right, welcome.
You too. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Sharon Covey, and I'm a native of Santa Clara, and I have been working in the hospitality industry for over 30 years. And I'm currently employed with the Santa Clara Convention and Visitors Bureau. The groups I bring to Santa Clara have significant economic impact. In the 7 years I've been selling Santa Clara, I've been able to educate our association and Smurf markets for the benefit of our city. We compete with San Jose and many surrounding cities, and without representation of Santa Clara, we will lose our clients to other cities. Please extend funding of the CVB as recommended, and this funding will provide for the continued work of the CVB in promoting our city and attracting visitors and convention delegates to our destination. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor Gilmore and the City Council. My name is Anna Cooper, and I am the National Sales Manager of the CVB. I focus on corporate groups and also brought in about 22,000 sleeping rooms for this year. I work very closely with my clients and promote the city of Santa Clara. I love my job, and it would be very saddened for me to know that I won't have one on Friday. You know, we all have mortgages, car payments, and everything, and this is so fast. 3 days is just unheard of. I promote the city of Santa Clara, love Santa Clara. We do conventions, small, large, and I'm very proud to work for the CVB. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor Gilmore and City Council. My name is Sean Hightower, and I complete the trio of the National Sales Managers. If you know anything about the hospitality business, and that's what we're in, it is about passion and a lot of hard work. And there are sometimes more work than there are rewards. The passion that I find in Santa Clara, I'm an Oakland resident and I drive here every day, and I'm driving home at 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm dedicated. And I come from a family of graduates from University of Santa Clara. But the passion of this city is strong, and what we do and the vital impact of the bottom line needs to be understood. Also, what needs to be understood is the dedication of this team. I would not be here if not for Annette. Her passion, her energy keeps us going. I see that when I go represent Santa Clara in shows, a lot of the question comes up, you're in Santa Clara, how is Annette? That shows that dedication that she has had for this city. I would be greatly affected if I lose a job in 3 days. I do have a daughter in college and mortgage and everything, but it would be more of a disservice to the city and this community to put us in this situation. So please do consider the impact that we've had and the dedication that this staff has shown to the city.
Thank you. Forward.
Hello and good morning. My name is Carrie Kiesecker, and I'm the Director of Destination Services for the Santa Clara CVB. It's been my pleasure for 11 years to represent and support the city. As far as destination services, part of my job and the main goal is to, among all the clients that do come to our city, it's our goal to make them happy when they're in our city, spend as much money as they can, and just basically want them back in our city as much as possible. It is kind of shocking to hear this news, and I have to say, as far as my prior position, I was a meeting planner, and I know the importance of a CVB. I've had many opportunities to work with CVBs, and I can tell you it's very, very helpful to have one in place. But we, as my colleagues said, we do appreciate support and hope we do have the extension of the 4 months, and do appreciate your assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning. Peter.
Good morning. My name is Peter Roberts. Thank you, council members and mayor. And thank you for conducting an audit of the chamber and the convention centre. It certainly looks like it has been needed. I'm speaking as a new member of the chamber. And I don't think it's in our best interest to discontinue the contract with the chamber now. I think you should finish the audit and look forward to the results. I'm surprised you didn't give yourself much breathing room here. You started a 3-month audit just 3 weeks before the contract ends with the chamber in just a few days. We've been told that the city started asking for documents earlier, but I'm surprised that you're being presented tonight with no option, really, to renew or bridge the current contract from the 1st of July. It's the city's responsibility if it wants to maintain services and contracts, and you're letting the services of the CVB to fall. I want you to remember that people are involved in your decision. People will lose their jobs that they've had for many years. And I urge you not to use the past mistakes of poor oversight by the council for people to lose their jobs. I'm pretty sure the chamber's not used to audits. In fact, the chamber reminds me of the child down the street. They come to your house for dinner, they grow up with your kids, and they kind of forget to go home. They kind of forget to take responsibility for themselves, and they don't realise they're not really part of your family. So I think the chamber needs to be, it needs to understand its independence. Transgressions of the chamber, to me, can be fixed, and they don't necessarily rise to the level of destroying staff jobs. You've had confidence with the chamber to date. There's been some concerns, but the results of a council contract, I think, would be harmful to the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. My name is Joe Szynski. I'm a volunteer chair of the board for the Santa Clara Chamber of Commerce Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm also a U.S. Army veteran, a 25-year resident, and an owner of a small business consulting firm. As a business consultant, I work with thousands of businesses over the years, and every business has their challenges. The chamber has theirs, the city has theirs. Let's find a way to work together. We've been together for 40 years. What's 4 months? Not much time considering everything that we've done over the last 40 years. A 4-month bridge, funded bridge, is nothing compared to what we can do together as we move forward. 40 years is a long time. We got maybe slack on both sides. Let's figure it out. Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning, Mayor Gilmore, City Council members. This is the city of what's possible. And I'm a brand new member to the Chamber of Commerce. And so I've had very little experience, but the experience I have had is they have given me wonderful tips on how to improve my ability to sell reclaiming our downtown, reclaiming our downtown. And I would like to think that there is something possible that can be done to help these people that are so passionate about the city, and that's what brought me up here. Their words brought me up here. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, council people. My name is Rosemarie Domingo. I am the Business Information Coordinator. I have been with the CVB team for over a year, and we are afraid that we're going to lose our job. And I believe that we have a good team. We have good leaders. We have a great team. You just have to give us a chance. Because I was working for the chamber before, as a temp, and I saw huge, really drastic changes. It was a mess. I came in and helped out, and I give them a chance because they were going through RDA restrictions. They had stopped booking, so how can we have more businesses for the future? So give us a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Good morning. My name is Odette Getty. I'm the CRM administrator and the reporting analyst at the CVB. I'm also a resident of Santa Clara. I've been here for more than 44 years. I now have the privilege of having been working with the CVB for the past 13 years and bringing economic impact, bringing dollars to my city here in Santa Clara. And hopefully I'll have a chance to be able to do that in the future, if you will permit us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Nick Kaspar. I just wanted to note that it is going to take time to redo a 4-month contract, and I just wanted to note that during that time period of 1 month, that's $125,000 of funding for the CVB budget to continue their operations, and so if that goes unfunded during the contract time, that the chamber is going to have to look to funding that during that time, and so we're going to have to look at that. But I just think that's important to note when we're making this plea here that month period would go unfunded. And so if I could ask that when you're considering this, to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, do you have just a comment, because everyone's come up already, and it's 12:25 a.m. and we still have
I know, I can make this short. Good morning. I know it's early, very early. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it, but we just received a letter from Puesto, a new exciting restaurant, and I was just going to read like a quick paragraph.
We all got that letter,
You got
but
it?
thank
All
you
right.
very much. Thank you. Please come forward.
Hello, Mayor, Council. I actually have nothing to do with the chamber. I'm a resident and I go to businesses. In fact, we had a team lunch at Puesto today. Had 3 tacos. But I'm going to say this, which is, I think that during a time where the projects that are coming before council are mostly housing and the retail and commercial components are being diminished to almost nothing. In some cases, we have mixed-use projects which have no retail. I think that businesses need as much support as they can get. And I think at this point, even if the management has had historically some problems, I'm going to say I've never worked for a company that's been perfect. Never have. Not even after they hired me. But I'm going to say that to assume that things will get worse when we have so many eyes looking at it, we're not going to say we're going to extend this contract and everything's going to be business as usual. I think we do say that we're going to extend this contract, get the business support that we need, because I don't know any other organization in Santa Clara that is looking after businesses in Santa Clara. If you ask me who's looking after housing interests and developer interests, I can tell you, but I can't tell you who's looking after business interests. And as someone who has come here for years saying, I would like to see more businesses, I would like to see more support, I would like to see even more parking so that these businesses, parking is the first line of defense that businesses have to stay alive, and I think that we need to understand that. I hear from city council people that, well, retail and businesses are dying. They are with that attitude, and I think at this point, we need as much support as we can get. And if we do have concerns, and I have concerns, I am the #1 person that would like to see more from any chamber. I'm very well tied in with some of the Korean community, and I'd like the opportunity to work and to see how we can improve this organization as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. City staff, city attorney, city manager, do you have some comments on that before we make our comments?
Ruth was able to go through one of the responses to the questions around the bookings. And so there's just 2 matters that I want to go through. What we see from the booking material that they provided is in July, there's 10 bookings. In August, there's 7 bookings. And in September, there's 4 bookings. And I just want to also then clarify issues around the 990 and whether the information that was requested was confidential or not. Under the Section C disclosure section of 990, there is item 18, which under Section 6104 requires an organization to make specific forms available. And it says that they should be available for public inspection and to indicate how they would be made available. And the chamber has checked off upon request, which is what we did. So the information should be publicly available. It's not confidential.
Okay, city attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I did not drag anyone through the mud. I was simply cautioning the council that there has been a real difficulty getting information from the current people managing the chamber. And they're managing public money. They're receiving tax dollars. And I was simply cautioning the council that if we were to move forward with any kind of extension, whether it be 4 months or a year or the next 10 years, there needs to be measures built into any such contract that would safeguard our ability to track what's happening with those tax dollars and to ensure that those tax dollars are being spent in accordance with the law. I'm not suggesting that any individual here has done anything wrong. I'm just simply noting the fact that it was like pulling teeth to get some of this information, and it was information that should have been readily available from a well-run nonprofit. That's all I was saying. So I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything. I'm just simply cautioning the council that when spending tax dollars on a contract, there has to be accountability built into that contract so that we can answer to the public, what did you do with our money?
Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Kolstad?
Thanks, Mayor. My little Granicus isn't working tonight, so I appreciate you calling on me. I have several observations about this situation. One is the staff report is concerning to me, and I take the city attorney's remarks very seriously. However, this investigation is not ready to go to the DA's office for a complaint yet. We really haven't proven things beyond a reasonable doubt that were wrong criminally. And procedurally, there may be some room for fine-tuning and improving how we're doing business. But I hope that part of the resolution of this issue tonight will be that the staff, and this comes at a crummy time for the city because the staff and the council have their plate pretty full with all this election stuff, and there's so many issues at play here. I don't know how the manager will find one person that could proceed to investigate this, but I think it needs further investigation to see if mistakes were made. And I see Dave Tompkins sitting back there. I believe that he would be very willing to sit down with staff and walk them through things item by item to make them feel that more comfortable about things, that it was legal, or if it wasn't legal, it was an honest mistake, and that you all could rectify it going forward. And I see that taking some time, which is why I'm leaning for this item 3B on the staff report, the recommendation that we have a temporary contract to run this thing until these issues can be ironed out. And if there was something really wrong that happened, then we'll have to figure out what we have to do. If they're just procedures that have to be fine-tuned, then maybe that'll be the way of the future. I'm not sure. But I don't think this deal is ready for prime time. I think we need to look at it more and extend this contract temporarily to keep the convention center open and making money, and wait until we have an absolute final verdict on what's happened here in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I don't
go
know.
ahead.
I don't know if my
Councilmember
button's
Mahan.
working. It looks on my thing it's working. Is it on yours? Anyway, I had a question, and that is, do we have any idea if service is disrupted, how much it will cost or how much we will lose?
No, we've not been able to do that type of analysis.
Councilmember Kolstad, was that a motion, and did it include funding in your motion?
I guess it wasn't structured as a motion, but I would make it a motion. I'm not sure about the nuance of it and every idea that I threw out there, but I think you get the idea that I believe we should adopt the staff recommendation 3B with the caveat that the staff continues to investigate with the cooperation of the Chamber of Commerce. And I think you'll get good cooperation from them going forward on this. And then maybe close to the end of this extension, the staff could come back and give us another report about whether there's any meat on the bone, or if they were made to understand what happened in the past.
And your item 3B includes funding for that period of time. Your item 3B would include funding for that period of time. Then I would second that motion. And I don't know if it's appropriate to make comments or if we're still in a question mode.
Make your comments now.
Okay, thank you. You know, first of all, we know that the Chamber of Commerce is a separate nonprofit entity. Its PAC, its Political Action Committee, is separate, a totally separate entity from the Chamber of Commerce. And it's a political entity. Chamber is a nonprofit. The CVB is part of the Chamber at this point in time. It could become its own separate entity, but at this point of time, it's a division, so to speak, of the Chamber. But the CVB and the Chamber have distinct operations, distinct functions, I even believe distinct budgets. So they operate totally independently, although they're under the same umbrella legal entity. And the contract is with the Chamber of Commerce. Now, the issues raised in the staff support, you know, they are serious issues. They are going to be investigated and audited. We've already heard from some of the chamber members giving us information that counteract some of the information that we're getting in the staff report already. It's just clear that we're still in sort of a discovery phase, a phase of gathering the information. We haven't put it all together. We haven't checked it. That's what the auditor is going to do. The chamber is going to have an opportunity to, you know, respond to allegations and issues that are raised. But I'm looking at this really from the public point of view and how it affects Santa Clara as a whole. I see our convention center as a great access to an asset to our city, especially with the stadium out there, especially with the related project coming in out there. We have the opportunity in Santa Clara to have our convention center area be a real destination point to increase its value for tourism and entertainment. It would be a grave disservice to our public to cause a disruption of service that would be hard to overcome. It will take a while to overcome financially, certainly, but even more in the area of our reputation, in the area of our prestige, in the area of how other communities think of us, it will hurt us even more if we are simply allowing our convention center to go unfunded, unresponded to. If we create a situation where calls to the CVB go unanswered because nobody's there, where emails just simply get an out-of-office reply, where business, the book of business that even exists now, goes unattended, much less getting business in the pipeline. Those are the kinds of things that take a lot longer to overcome. And once you've sort of gotten a reputation of being dysfunctional, as being unresponsive, as being, hey, you can't get a hold of anybody for whatever reason, it's very, very hard to get that back. And we shouldn't be putting ourselves in the position that we're creating for our convention center by doing that. I don't disagree that there's a lot of work to be done. I certainly don't disagree that the contract absolutely needs to be reformed. It hasn't been looked at in, what, 40 years, 30 years? So it's outmoded. It doesn't meet, as the city attorney has pointed out, it doesn't meet the standards that we currently have for our city contracts. Certainly a lot of provisions, new provisions have become standard in our contracts, need to be integrated into the convention center contract, whether it's with this chamber or whatever management comes about. And the chamber may not prove to be the best manager in the future, but we need time to work that out. And it just does our city and our public a grave disservice to simply say, sorry, as of June 30th, no more CVB, we don't know what we're going to do, we don't know how we're going to manage this business. That doesn't serve our city very well. So as an interim, I like the city manager's recommendation and idea that, you know, give us some time to work through it. They're working on a lot of other things. A lot of things will come to light through the audit, and we will be able to make a more reasoned, informed decision after we have that information. And as I say, it may prove that the chamber's not the best manager. It may prove that we need a different management system. But regardless of that, we still need a CVB because there are separate functions. And I know the CVB has other means to get funding, to look at organizing itself separate from the chamber. Those probably are things that need to be thought about in the next coming 4 months, to look at other funding sources for the CVB. But the CVB function is so important to any city. If you're a visitor to a city, if you go online, probably the first thing that pops up is their CVB's website, and that's where you go to get information. And that's how you book a hotel room or book your tickets or find out what attractions there are in a city. It's no different, and we need the CVB regardless of what happens to the convention center management. So I hope our council can support this interim decision and give the city manager enough time for her to work through and come to a reasonable conclusion.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. Well, my first responsibility is to all of the residents of Santa Clara and as a fiduciary of this city to make sure that our assets and funds are treated appropriately. That certainly doesn't mean that I'm not sensitive or to the needs of employees, particularly in facing an imminent loss of a position, having lived through a lot of high-tech ups and downs and having people there 1 minute and they're gone the next. So I'm very sensitive to that and the needs of continuing to have business come into the convention center. I mean, it doesn't sound like we have a huge pipeline coming in. I mean, and I don't even know if this is possible. So, I mean, I don't think our issue really is with the employees who are on the, on the front lines that are talking to our visitors and our businesses and all of that. I think it's with the above management structure, and oftentimes it's the people who are doing the day-to-day jobs that sometimes are the become victims. So I don't know if there's any possibility of a way, particularly for the chamber, to agree that somehow we sever at this point the role of the chamber's oversight, and if there's any other way to oversee the activity of those CVB employees for a short period of time while we explore another model. Because as I said, I think my issue, and I'm not, we have preliminary information. There's some things that don't look very good, but it could be, just a series of bad management practices, but that still doesn't mean that we, continue with them. But so city manager or city attorney, is there some other way that we could kind of sever the relationship, but put the employees under some other management umbrella?
Well, the employees would have to have an employer, and so currently they're employed by the chamber. So unless somebody was going to step up with some kind of new entity that could be the employer of the CVB employees that do the CVB function, I don't know how we can do that at this point. I mean, we could look at a direction to do that, but we couldn't enter into a contract tonight with somebody that hasn't even been identified as a different employer.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of some other third party that could take over, be the fiscal agent or something, at least for them, without.
Any of this type of brainstorming is going to require some time, and it's not anything that we can get done in 3 days, unfortunately. And clearly, I think we established earlier our first and foremost priority over the next couple of days is to comply with a very serious court order. I can say, though, that under more time, it would be worth exploring the convention center as a potential entity to receive some of the CVB functions. But the analysis, the structure, how that would be done is, there's just no time this week to do that.
Okay, other council members? Either one? If not, I have comments. All right, go ahead,
I'm
Vice Mayor.
sorry,
Go
Mayor.
ahead.
No,
I want to put on the
sorry,
record,
sorry.
because if there is any assumption that to hire them as city employees, we would not even be able to do the paperwork this week and get all the logistical milestones completed within 3 days.
Okay, Vice Mayor, do you have comments? Otherwise, I have comments.
Yes, I do. I have a lot of concerns. I've heard a lot of testimony about and this presentation, and as a result, have a lot of concerns. And I think one of the first things that jumped out at me was the use of the free use examples that were shared. And you know, that why it gives me a lot of concern is just you know, the city, we just completed our annual budget, and you know, over the last 5 months, we've watched how you have found ways to balance the budget, you know, and bring down the deficit, and then looking ahead, you know, how we're going to be operating on a, you know, a budget deficit, you know, if we take on any new opportunities or work. And, you know, here we are, we're just like tying ourselves to not take on any other things. And there's so many things that we want to do, and we can't do it because we're looking at a potential budget deficit. And people know this. I mean, you talk about this at every single council meeting, you know, when we're discussing the budget. And we've had representatives from the chamber, the convention center, the CVB here, hearing these things because they're impacted by it too. And yet, even with knowing that and hearing that, they've continued to allow these operations to take place, to basically self-serve and also give themselves discounts, give themselves discounts. It's city money that could have helped close the budget, close the gap. And that's how I'm looking at it. And it makes me angry because this has not been a secret. But yet we're finding out now that there have been some secrets, and it's not fair. It's public funds. And so I have a serious problem with that. You know, the city manager has been asking for documents since April. Wasn't on short notice. These things could have been addressed, but people had to wait until the final hour. They had to wait until their feet were held to the fire to respond. And now here we are at, you know, almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and people are begging, you know, because they don't want to lose their job on Friday. And that's not fair. The opportunity was there. You can disagree, but there are grave concerns. And, you know, going back to self-dealing, we all want to help each other, but not with public funds. There needs to be change. There needs to be change. And if the last 4 months are indicative of what is to come, then there is no guarantee that the next 4 months of what the next 4 months are going to look like. And so I am not going to support the motion. There needs to be change. I don't know what that change is, but I will not support the motion. And I think, you know, the management agreement, there were provisions to provide information to the city, and it wasn't done. And you were asked, and it wasn't done. And so it's now put the city in a position to have to take action. And I don't know what that action is going to be, but, you know, people want to point, you know, fingers at the city, but I think people have to look at themselves as well and how things have been operating and really wonder and realize what's been allowed to happen and how we got to this place at 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Okay, so the city manager was given direction by me as a request to get the information to her in April to rectify the situation. And we've gotten reports that you're gonna get the report, you're not gonna get the report, you're not entitled to report. I mean, it just was this back and forth kind of a thing. And it's really disturbing. I mean, no matter how you wanna look at what she pulled up there, we have someone that's digging and they are finding things. And maybe we don't have all the facts, or maybe everything isn't as it looks or appears. But to us, it's like we're at 0 hour, and then I have to feel guilty that 10 people came up here begging for their jobs. I didn't put them in that position. They were asked. The management, the chamber was asked to provide the city manager with the details. I think she's worked effectively since she's been here. I think she's fair, she's balanced. But now it's like, I can't support a year. There's no way I'm gonna support a year. Alone, the 4 months, you would have to put in play all kinds of restrictions for that bridge to even happen. So I'm kind of like, I don't know which way to go. I mean, to me, it's like I would just let's scrap the whole thing and let's do the Phoenix, let's build it from the base and just start over again. And I don't know how to fix self-dealing. I don't know how to fix what is going on in there in these 990s and all this stuff that's been shown to us. It's disheartening because I think that there's too many stakeholders in the room here that have a little piece of this. Everybody's got ownership on this one. And I don't know how to fix it. I just know that she's come to us with this report. Some people get upset about her findings. Some people think that, you know, we're screwing them over. But I don't like being put in a position when we asked for this stuff in April that there could have been some cohesive, collaborative conversation going on to really fix it. But there was some posturing that was done that everybody got their backs up against the wall and said, oh, why are you coming at me? You're not allowed. And that doesn't work well when the money is coming from the taxpayers to fund. So I'm just concerned on why everybody has to get crazy about all this stuff. I'm not supporting the motion for a year. I'm thinking about a bridge, but I don't even want to do that because I don't even know if the city manager can give me some guarantees that more stuff is going to happen in 4 months. So I'm really conflicted on this, but and I am truly leaning towards just scrapping the whole thing and then just starting over from the beginning. But I think there is a way that Lisa Moreno would be able to take some of the CBB stuff, because I think she's got a staff that's strong enough at the convention center to hold together, because I know that they do things over there as far as, they're not expert meeting planners or whatever, but they know how to keep that convention center running. And she's been doing that for 25 years. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what direction to put you in, but I think that this is just a really bad situation that we're all in. And I don't want to see anybody lose their jobs, but it looks like there's 14 people gonna lose their jobs, and it lies on my shoulders right now, and I'm not happy about it. So I think we just have some self-healing to do. We have some deep conversations, and I think that the chamber and the CBB and the convention center, whoever's engaged in this, they need to leave their egos at the door and have a conversation with the city manager and work this out. So I'm not supporting the motion. If there's an alternate, I might think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the public should know that we've been studying this issue for some time and we take it seriously. The chamber was initially uncooperative and would not provide basic information about how our tax dollars were being used, which leads us to this evening. So the city requested this information. Some was provided, most information was not. It was not a cooperative, they were not cooperative meetings, it wasn't a cooperative relationship, and all of a sudden we're here this evening. So I'm gonna say that we're not gonna take a lot of ownership for being here this evening. It's because of the not being forthcoming on the documents on how public money was being spent. Now, information is dribbling in little by little, including this evening, and that's not the way this should have been dealt with by the chamber management for the Convention Visitors Bureau. Our city staff has discovered some very serious issues concerning conflicts of interest, self-dealing, possible commingling of public resources with the Political Action Committee, and inconsistent federally filed forms. All of those things are what we're talking about this evening, not a value of a Convention Visitors Bureau or the value of a Chamber of Commerce in a community or the management of the convention center. Those are the issues that we're talking about this evening. Management issues of public money. The initial reports from the independent auditor have just provided just a snapshot of what's probably to come. So as representatives and having the fiscal responsibility of the entire city, we have to take that seriously. It's not, we don't have a choice at this point. So, you know, this really started when our staff discovered that the chamber received a major increase in the management fee without city council approval. That's how this started. So then we asked for additional information and found that there was open checkbooks to the general fund, which caused great concern for us. And so we asked our staff to hire independent people to look at what is there. And this is just the preliminary findings after just a few weeks. A consultant hired by the city earlier, a few months ago, discovered that we also have performance issues, including the fact that we have very few citywide conventions. And a city of our size, with a convention center of our size and a budget of our size, we should be having a lot more citywide conventions than we do, and we should have more on the books and more in our pipeline. We have serious deferred maintenance at the convention center, serious deferred maintenance, because the management is not making the facility a priority for us and bringing those issues to light for us. So we have serious issues, serious. And what disappoints me is that the chamber leadership is denying them rather than working with us to try to fix them. I heard so many excuses tonight as to, oh, that's not true on the tax forms, and oh, we aren't really self-dealing because it's a chamber, you know, response. We work with each other. Well, that's fine as a chamber, but you don't work with each other and self-deal when you're dealing with city money. Those are two separate things. And the fact that you don't understand that and you don't see the conflicts in that just completely concern me. So I would have loved the fact, and I've had many conversations with chamber members, chamber leadership to say, hey, we really want to work with you. This city, we really support this. Let's work together. But now after discovering these things and how our public money, our city's public money is being managed, we don't have a choice at this point. We don't have a choice. So I think that in the interest of good government and reform, we have to fix the problem. It's not going to take 4 months or 6 months or a year. It's huge. These problems are huge. And as the information from the audit does come forward, which I hope we'll get in a timely manner, I don't know if these things can be fixed. I just don't know. It's so poorly managed and so much in denial about how it's managed. I don't blame any of the employees of the CVB. I think you're the innocent people in all of this. I think you do your jobs passionately, you love the city, you work hard, you know, and that everybody does. I'm not blaming any of you. And I don't think any of you are in charge of the management of the public money. So I would like to come up with some option for us to take care of and work with the CVB employees to make sure that we can come up with a new management system for them. I think ideally I would like to have a CVB type function inside the convention center as opposed to us paying rent in a building when we have the convention center right there. I mean, I think it needs to be redone. I don't want to see people lose their jobs, but I refuse to vote for public money that to an organization that has had these types of serious issues in the preliminary audit and serious issues by even raising their own management fee without city council approval. I think it really shows a lack of judgment, complete lack of judgment with public funds. So I think that I'm going to ask that we don't extend the contract, but we ask the city manager to work with the CVB management employees to help the current workers and maybe extend what's, if possible, working with either a new consultant or another organization or management, or in the absence of that, come up with a severance package for these employees that have spent all their time and effort with the city. So that's what I would like to see, something like that. I see you're all shaking your heads, no, 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 but I think we need to come up with something for these employees. If we can.
I would ask the chamber to see what possibilities they may. We did talk about the chamber bridging. Perhaps they need to look at membership dues to bridge the CVB. I just have to really caution the council the extent of impact that this court order has put on my office and how all day we have had to prioritize in order to deploy ourselves, the city attorney's office included. And I cannot sit here and tell you that I will be successful with non-disrupted service. It's the reason why we put it in the report, and be able to successfully implement the council direction.
So how
and let me just say, I'm sorry,
I don't want to
Mayor.
continue to throw good money into something that's not accountable to the public.
The two individuals who have been staffing this are Ruth and I, because we have no other person in our office to assign this. I've mentioned early on the absence of a contract manager for the chamber contracts, which has resulted in collateral duty of Ruth and I managing this. And so my priorities have changed as of today. I've got some serious deadlines to meet with other staff.
What about
I cannot accept a direction with no disruption of services.
That's well taken. What about the existing consultants that we have? Would they be able to help us?
We've talked with them, but even at best, they spoke in terms of 30 to 45 days. The turnaround time, the ramping up, these things will take time, and there is going to be a disruption in services unless the chamber can self-solve how it will bridge through its own tools and resources.
I'm just concerned because, I'll get to you in a minute, I'm just concerned because I see that there is denial that there's issues or problems, and so I don't know how they're going to self-solve when they don't believe that there's a problem.
The only thing I can suggest, and I don't know how long drawdowns would be, but we are aware, and it is public funds. The chamber manages a reserve for CVB, which it carry forwards each year. We think the balance is somewhere in the 170,000, and if you
How
want to.
much, I'm sorry?
$170,000 reserve. It's something that, that could be an opportunity if the council wanted to authorize that they use those funds. But I don't know where, if you're leaning towards a 4-month agreement, that might be able to bridge them. It's a reserve that they manage already and have, but it is the use of public funds. And it probably would be a gift of public funds.
Here, let me make a suggestion, and I've just thought of it, so I don't know if it'll work, but perhaps we extend the agreement on a very modified basis for a very short period of time, where the only money that we give them is to directly pay salaries and nothing more, with maybe a slight bit of money to manage the payrolling and the just the sheer just employee management function, maybe for a month or two, where they're not spending money on advertising or anything like that. It's just purely to have those employees transition out of their jobs over the next 2 months.
60 days.
60 days. It's up to you what you think is a good practice.
And it gives them an opportunity to self-correct and come back with a plan to the city council for self-correcting, or to find another management company.
Yeah, I would, if you included something like that in your direction, that we recognize that it still may not be done this week, and that it may get done over the next 10 business days, 15 business days. I mean, it's just where we're at with respect to order of priority.
So 60 days, I would recommend to the council. Councilmember Mahan,
Yeah,
waiting.
thank you. Actually, that's part of what I was going to suggest is doing that very same thing. But I was also going to suggest, is it better to run it through the convention center rather than the chamber, and can we do it that way?
That's where I was with, if we had more time for brainstorming, because there is a funding mechanism already through the convention center, there's space there. And there's a financial relationship between the city and the zero-based account. I was thinking that maybe there is a way to make that work with the CVB staff. But I just don't have the time this week, and as I mentioned, it's been between Ruth and I to even really advance that thinking in terms of how it would be implemented logistically.
So if the motion were amended to be that we would authorize the city manager to come up with the appropriate mechanism to fund the salaries only of the CVB, and I would suggest maybe 90 days, because I know your plate is so full over the next upcoming couple of weeks, and leave it to the city manager's discretion either to fund that from the reserve chamber account or the convention center, to switch it over to the convention center. Would that be something that would be doable?
I can see either a 60 or 90-day funding agreement only,
right?
With the chamber, because it's only one organization. It's just the chamber is the organization. So it would either be a standalone agreement or a modification to the CVB agreement to the convention center management agreement.
I have a better idea.
Okay.
And this is, I mean, we're all thinking out loud here. Have the reserve return back to the city as a source of funds to draw down from through the zero-based account, and pay only salaries through the ZBA, through the convention center billing. And that may even eliminate the need for an agreement, because the city is the funding entity. We're receiving back and drawing back down from our reserve. And we could work through the logistics with the convention center general manager, Lisa Moreno.
Okay.
I mean, that's as much as I can come up with at 1 in the morning.
That's fine. I would agree to a 60-day, not a 90-day, because I think we need the pressure on to get all the information, and if there is to be any self-correcting, that it gets gone, that it happens sooner rather than later. And then secondly, that we also, as part of the motion, I'd ask the maker of the motion to amend it to 60 days and to also ask that we activate our consultant right away to start looking at options for us. Yes, JLL.
I didn't make it. I seconded. Pat.
Oh, I thought you made the motion.
Oh, Pat made
Okay,
it. I
standing
seconded it.
issue, and it's one of the reasons why we've asked is there is a need to manage assets, and you may want to think through in terms of location, and I don't know whether the chamber will charge us rent if CVB staff stay in the chamber. All of that needs to be resolved, so you may want to provide some direction or your position as a council.
So I guess my question would be, if we go for the 60-day and it goes through the convention center, like you said, and do we have to put in there that all 14 of those people are paid? Is that part, do we have to put that in the motion to make sure that they are all paid, all 14 of them?
I think that's understood.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure because you want clarification on the motion. So I'm good with the 60-day part of it. If the maker of the motion is good with the 60 days.
Maker.
I am the maker? Okay, I'm the maker. So I will take this, if you,
Pat
we could do the
Kolstad.
60 days
Pat
through the
Kolstad.
convention center, but can we have a review? Can you get back to us to make sure that these employees are taken care of? Because this is going to be very hard on them. I heard mortgages and other things going on, and I wouldn't want that to happen to me. So
I have to continue to reinforce there may be a disruption. We're going to, this seems like the easiest way to approach it.
Okay.
But the devil is in the details. Until we actually get through and have time to get through this, there may be a disruption. I will send the council an email if that's the case.
This is just temporary, so.
yeah, right, but it's like also 1:10 in the
logistically
morning.
putting this in place and understanding the transfer, there's work associated with that and time.
Okay, so the least resistance, I guess, that we can get, so the 60 days. So, okay, so that would be my motion, is to make sure that through the funding mechanism through the convention center.
Motion on the floor already.
Oh, that's right, we already have a motion on the floor. Sorry. I can't say anything. You're
Okay,
right. Sorry.
Pat Kolstad, motion.
Well, I'd like to withdraw that first motion. And I would like you to articulate those exact things that you just brought up about how many days, how we're going to fund it, because I think you've crafted the best motion that we can get for now, and I need help.
So I suggested a 60-day funding just for salaries for the Convention Visitor Bureau employees. There's 14 of them, or I'm not sure if there's 12 or 14. I know some are funded by the TID. And that we immediately activate our consultant. I think they're actually working to come up with some options for us that hopefully will include the CVB employees.
And I think the
Return of the
manager you had a suggestion about funding?
Yes, and that we use the reserve for the
And,
CVB.
and transferring the reserve back to the city and to pay
For
the
drawdown.
employees.
Okay,
That's the funding source.
we got all that? That came out of my lips, even though it came out of her lips.
Jennifer, did you get that?
Do you need a second on that one?
Second.
I do. I just have one
Okay.
clarification, actually. So we're directing the city manager to, and this is the part I need help on, negotiate and execute a 60-day funding agreement.
No.
Okay, so I'll take that
There's
out.
no agreement.
To
Okay,
just
thank you.
To fund them for 60 days.
The funding source.
The funding salaries and specific related costs for up to 60 days, retain consultant JLL immediately to look at options, return the reserve to the city to draw down from for the sole purpose of funding the salaries, and that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
We had
That's
a
my
motion and a second. Would you please register our lights on this motion?
There's no negotiate and execute.
The system is not working properly tonight, so that is
Yeah,
not
there
part
is
of
no,
it.
for the record, there's no negotiate
Correct.
and execute. There's no document to execute.
Because we have the funding source.
And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Do we want to continue things or move on? It's 1:15 in the morning. Which ones do we have to do? The elections, the city clerk? What do we have to do? City manager?
So there's the issues of the city clerk, the calling the election for November. There's the ordinance, the introduction of the ordinance for the assistant finance director auditing functions. And we think that's timely because we have completed our interview process.
Could you be quiet? I'm sorry, we're still conducting our meeting. Could you take it outside? Thank you. I'm sorry, which items can we, you want to quickly just start going through them?
Let's just blitz through
Keep going through.
I don't know how much blitzing we can do, but okay. So here we go.
Perhaps just to expedite, I would take item 8, which is, you've heard the matter before several times. This is just the introduction of the ordinance that confirms that you have authorized us to assign auditing functions to the assistant finance director position. It changes the ordinance, whereas before they were assigned to the city clerk. With this ordinance and your previous discussions, this implements that direction.
We already talked about that. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion second. Any discussion from anyone? Lights on the motion?
I'm sorry,
8.
I missed
Number
it.
8.
No, I know. I'm sorry, I missed who the
Want
motion.
to do old school?
No, can you just remind me who the motion was made by and who the seconder was?
We're staff recommendation.
That's what I'm
Who
saying.
made the motion?
I did. Sorry.
Thank you.
Debbie and Kathy. Yeah, staff recommendation to move the auditor's function to the finance director. Thank you.
And that passes with only 5 on the dais. Okay. Next.
So the next item is, there's before you 3 resolutions. All of them in total put in place the requirements for the November election. There's a resolution to call a special election for the partial term for the city clerk. There is the general election for the 2 council seats and the mayor position. And then there's the item C, which is the resolution establishing the political campaign volunteer limits. And we have a request from the city clerk to round up to $43,400.
That's exactly right.
Right now in your report, it says $43,390.
So until things change, is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Or do we have to do those separately, those resolutions?
Yeah, you need these read individually? You got this?
Well, that was B. We're just doing B right now.
Yeah, but there's 3 recommendations
There's 3
for resolutions.
recommendations. Yeah.
When taken collectively, you take all the necessary actions to put in place the November election.
We can do all of those.
Yeah. Okay, so we're good. All right.
All right. Is there any member of the public wanting to speak on that issue?
Okay. Let's
all right.
take a vote.
Please register your vote.
Woohoo.
And that passes with 5 on the dais. Okay, next.
Are we
going to keep going? I'm on a roll.
You're doing such a great job.
So the next item, this has been traditionally introduced by the city clerk. We have been before you in study session and in multiple hearings on what the duties of the next elected city clerk should be. And if you recall, we provided two different scenarios, one where the city clerk would hold the election responsibilities as well as other responsibilities that are outlined in the report, and assign the administrative duties, which are in technical and professional in nature, to the assistant city clerk. The other is to maintain the duties as assigned. There are two other actions associated with how you want to design the elected city clerk position. The first is the compensation, and there's discussion in the report of how you could move forward. Either you could maintain the status quo with the current salary and benefits. You can establish the compensation equivalent to a council member, or you could hold off on a decision, take a decision that is interim, and then ask that the committee review when it's convened in January for elected compensation, that it review the city clerk compensation and bring a report back to you. The other option is that you have to decide is benefits. Right now, this is a fully benefited position, and that it is paying into CalPERS pensions, receives leaves, vacations, as well as other benefits provided. And so you could set the benefits equivalent to the council member benefits for purposes of addressing the salary and compensation concerns that came up when the council heard the matter related to the elected police chief. At that time, it was our recommendation that that the benefits associated with a full-time non-elected employee not be assigned to an elected status candidate.
Okay.
So that's where we're
Council?
at. I don't know if we can answer questions, and we certainly have a PowerPoint that's ready to go.
We had a study session on this. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Good.
I'd like to pick alternative number 1, to direct the city attorney to draft an ordinance amending the city code to specify the primary responsibilities of the elected city clerk and assistant city clerk, option 1, and to draft an ordinance setting a stipend for the position of the elected city clerk and benefits comparable to what the current council members are eligible to receive.
I'll second that, but I kind of like the idea about, maybe we do that on an interim basis and then just have this position go to the salary setting.
I like that.
You know,
If you want to add that on there, yes, I'm fine. I'm good.
if we have set the salary for the time being the same as a council member, and then leave it to the salary setting commission to determine what the stipend going
I'll add that little
forth.
friendly codicil.
Okay.
All right. Any other council questions? And then I'll go to the public.
What?
I don't have, it doesn't show anything.
I
so.
know, I just did have a request to speak.
Councilmember Mahan?
I have to say that philosophically, I really just do not support this. I do not see any reason to change our current charter on what the city clerk does. I understand we can do this reassignment, but I don't think we should. I really think we need the independence of a fully elected city clerk with full responsibility. I think that's what the public expects. Once again, we're discussing it with 0 people here to even hear about this. I don't think people are even aware of this. So no, I'm not going to support this motion.
Okay, I just want to make for clarification, we're not changing the charter.
I didn't say we're changing the charter. I said it's in the charter.
Sorry.
No, I said it's in the charter, but that we can, but that doesn't mean we should.
All right, I misheard you. Any other council members want to speak on this?
I'm sorry, but can I just clarify? So I
Yes.
heard word alternative 1 is the motion, and then drafting the ordinance to set the stipend at $2,000, and then to have it go to the salary setting commission. But question on the accrued time off and benefits. I just wanted to, I didn't hear that in the motion.
Thought she said same as a council member.
Everything.
The same as a council member. I read
Everything is
option
same as
number
a
1,
council
but then we
member.
had the little friendly codicil of having the salary setting.
I just wanted to clarify it. Thank you very
for
much.
that. Members of the public, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is David Carey. I'd just like to make a few comments about some of the things I've observed here in Santa Clara. One is, I'd encourage you to think about whether it's really useful for the city council to be doing business at 1 o'clock in the morning. I think there's a lot. I understand the kind of, what drove you to deal with the CVB and everything. But think about that for future meetings. The other thing is, I would really encourage you to think about the importance of having a independent elected city official who is the chief city elections official. It's my perception that some of the messaging from the city on Measure A would be different, or would have had an opportunity to be different if it had been put out by an independently elected official, and to the benefit of Measure A. And I think there are just a lot of things that, in terms of handling the elections, that really should be something that a separate official should be handling.
That's what we are proposing.
Thanks, that's what we're proposing. It would be the independently elected city clerk who would be in charge of all of the elections issues. So that's exactly what the motion on the floor is. Anyone else? All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. Please register your vote. And that passes on a 5-1. Okay.
Can I just have clarification? Because
Yes.
that just flashed up very quickly. It's my understanding that I would be coming back with an ordinance to actually state the responsibilities of the city clerk, to limit them to the elected city clerk. Because I didn't exactly read that way, but I just wanted to clarify that
It was
okay.
Yeah, it was the option.
All right. Looking at the screen, sorry, I just wanted to clarify
From the assistant
that.
city clerk.
Thank you.
So my only question on that, so would the assistant city clerk report to the city clerk or to the city manager?
Excuse me?
Would the assistant city clerk report to the city clerk or to the city manager?
Everyone reports to the city manager, except for me. I report to you.
As he chuckles.
Okay, thank you.
Next.
Oh, note and file, okay, reports of members and special committees. Okay.
I'll wait and give, I was going
No,
to talk about
please,
APPA,
yeah.
but we'll wait.
No, please. Oh, you have a report to give. Oh, so does Councilmember Colston.
But we'll
All right.
note that,
For
I'll
the
talk
next
about
meeting on the
time.
5th. Okay. Next under, city manager, executive director reports, and then the next item.
There's 3 written reports in there just to update the city council on items that have come before you. The first is the CFP agreement, and I know last time I said it would come to this agenda. We are still working through an issue that needs to be further clarified. It's outlined in the report, and we have had some good conversations over the last couple of days. The second is a status report on the worker retention report for the concession agreement. It is going well, and there is certainly a need to hire, and the issues around worker retention are fully compliant with the city's ordinance. The last is coming from the previous council discussion and Councilmember O'Neill's inquiry about the inventory of harassment in the workplace, our policy in place, as well as I am going to initiate training with our boards and commissions, as they also, their actions represent those of the city and could also pose risk. And so we will be extending outreach on harassment training, harassment in the workplace training to our boards and commissioners.
Okay.
So it's just a note and file to fill any gaps. There was the question in terms of the inventory of services and what's required. That's the requirements for city employees.
Can we note and file all 3 at once,
Yes.
or can we take them separately?
No file.
We can? Okay. Unless there's an objection, is there a motion to note and file those 3 reports? We're not taking any action on them. Motion second. Any member of the public? All right, there's a motion and second for those 3 reports to note and file. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Next, one thing I just wanted to read before adjournment, that we sent out a special certificate on behalf of the City Council to Norma Haxton. She was the City of Santa Clara crossing guard for 22 years, and she doesn't live in the area anymore, so she wasn't able to come down and get her award for her 22 years of dedication to keeping students and community members safe in her work as a crossing guard for the City of Santa Clara and for playing a vital role in our community. So we did give her this certificate of special recognition. And we want to thank Norma, she's probably watching, for all of her work with the city of Santa Clara, and we wish you were here, so next time you come, we'll give you the proclamation. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion second.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.